The Rise of Fascism and Why You Should Be Very Worried. My great-grandpa on the maternal side is Czech, and he once told us how during the rise of that party in neighboring Germany, there were many in Czechoslovakia as well who were sympathetic to them, and their leader and their ideals, as truth be told, many Czechs saw the Germans as equals, and thought that their hatred of the Jewish people, Roma, or Slavic people somehow didn't apply to them, the Czechs who saw themselves as Germanic or sympathized with the Third Reich. Meanwhile, many of those who opposed or didn't sympathize with them also downplayed the threat that they posed, by saying things like, "Oh, what's happening in Germany won't happen here," or "That guy won't make good on his crazy threat to invade us." "Oh, it probably won't get that bad," or some other way of saying that we, those who are raising alarms over the danger he actually posed, are overreacting. When German forces invaded, a number of Czech people actually welcomed them, giving their salutes to the columns of invading troops or tearing down the Czech flag from buildings themselves to replace it with the flag of that party. However, my great-grandpa saw the danger that these clowns posed, the repression, violence, and death they'd bring, and lo and behold, when the Germans did actually occupy Czechoslovakia, turns out they weren't just oppressing the Jewish, gay people, communists, liberals, Czech nationalists, and academics, but also extended their oppression to ordinary Czech people, including those of Germanic ancestry. Turns out they didn't see us as equals after all, and many of those who'd welcomed the Germans had a "why are the leopards eating my face? I supported them" mentality when the Gestapo came after them as well. This is basically an oversimplification of what my great-grandpa told me, but yeah, the reason the Third Reich and fascism in general was able to rise the way it does and is still doing is because people either underestimate the danger or downplay it for years, treating it like a joke until that joke isn't funny anymore. I'm worried about the growing divide between the left and right, fueled by social media algorithms, echo chambers, and sensationalist media. How is this ever going to be fixed? From all countries that really shouldn't fall to fascism, the US is at the top of my list. The mix of the nuclear arsenal, geostrategic power and pure military power, American exceptionalism and intelligence agency capabilities of the US would become the biggest threat humanity has ever experienced. So while I saw the writing on the wall with Trump's last term ending and the apparent powerlessness of the system against his shenanigans, I really hoped US institutions would hold a real fascist takeover at bay. The last year has weakened this hope quite a bit. So in conclusion, I am quite worried, but try to live a cynic serenity, even though this might be an oxymoron. Yeah, I'm making this video in late January 2026, and we'll see how well it's aged when it comes out in a few months. Between the fact that Greenland might be invaded, him trying to suspend the midterms, or his own party finally getting sick of him, it honestly feels like anything could happen. Dutch person here. Think of what your Rubicon is to prevent fascism. The thing that differs from Europeans and Americans is that after World War II, you got veterans with PTSD from the war. Here, you used to have entire families with PTSD from surviving or being held prisoner. I'm not saying that one is worse than the other, but I've seen how that World War II trauma has been passed to my parents and also mildly got passed over to me. My grandparents always had canned food in the house and got really angry when you didn't finish any meal. They hid money in places in the house. They'd jump when they'd hear a siren. They were always ready for another war. I think American citizens have been spared this. Your war veterans have experienced it, but fortunately not their wives or their children. They've seen the PTSD with returning soldiers, but not the children. Fascism is a true evil that shouldn't be ignored or nuanced. It doesn't matter if it was or wasn't a Third Reich salute, it still has an effect, and it should be addressed that it's wrong. The USA is more like a company now, and they can't admit a small mistake, where corporate policies don't allow that. Being a true leader is saying, in a speech to the public, "I'm sorry, that wasn't my intention. This." Ask people from the Balkan regions. Some nations here had massive atrocities and wars until 1995. Most people over 30 lived through it and remember it, including several of my family members. I think it's easier to dismiss it as not that serious or dangerous if you or your family haven't been directly affected by similar events. My grandparents explained in explicit detail the horrors of the Third Reich from World War II. They explained the even worse horrors of the Ustasa. My father got drafted in the 90s, and his two best friends got sniped within a week of each other, leaving behind families just as young as his. He was the lucky one. He only got PTSD from the Balkan Wars, leaving the family land we had for more than 500 years. My mother has issues, my brother and I saw horrors, my family once again had to run from New Stasa. And I can admit that what I experienced is but a brief blip compared to what was described to me of World War II. But I can say with certainty this: what's happening in the USA, here in Australia, and the rise of the ultra-right-wing in pockets around the world is nothing but blood-seeking fascism. There's no other fitting description. This is the new wave of Third Reich enthusiasts and needs to be stamped out as soon as possible. I'm 43, I've lived through a war, being a refugee, moving continents, 2 financial catastrophes, a pandemic and a housing crisis. I don't know if I have the steam to fight the modern N party here too. 30 years of being constantly stressed out is taking its toll. Well, it's past my bedtime and I'm awake. I'm a federal employee writing in January 2025. These past 3 weeks have been hell. I'm much more worried about the rise of people who don't know what fascism is. That's been around for a long time, my friend. None other than George Orwell once wrote, "The word fascism has now no meaning except insofar as it signifies something not desirable." He wrote that in 1946. The biggest problem with the rise of fascism is that we were never educated on what it looks like and how to stop it in its tracks. All we're taught and see in documentaries is the end result of it, and only in the form of that guy and the Second World War. There's never any talk about his rise from 1922 until the war broke out, and we never talk about how it happened in other examples from around the world. We should learn from history. We're taught the wrong history for things like this. Yeah, they showed us pictures of the camps and made us read Anne Frank's diary, and we all thought we would have stood up and said something, because of course by the time people are being confronted with their government literally starving and murdering people, all but the worst sadists will feel horror and shame. But the thing is, a lot of Germans didn't know about the camps. There were whispers and rumors from citizens that lived near them, and lots of denials and downplaying and dismissals, but it wasn't like the Reich held open houses that allowed giant tour groups into them every weekend. The Germans, by and large, didn't like to think about what was happening to the Jewish people and other oppressed minorities in much the same way that most of us don't want to think about what happened where our hamburgers come from. All of the atrocities in that period in Germany happened under the noses of citizenry with a minority that totally supported the leader no matter what, and a majority that didn't mind what that guy did, necessarily, as long as they personally saw a net benefit. That's the current stage we're in, as we all watch immigrants get sent to Guantanamo, hear about the Secretary of State discussing selling American prisoners to dangerous third world prisons, and hear about career civil servants getting axed in ideological purges. And most of us are either grateful it isn't happening to us, or convinced it could never happen to us. From Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri. As the Americans learned so painfully in Earth's final century, free flow of information is the only safeguard against tyranny. The once chained people whose leaders at last lose their grip on information flow will soon burst with freedom and vitality, but the free nation, gradually constricting its grip on public discourse, has begun its rapid slide into despotism. Beware of he who would deny you access to information, for in his heart he dreams himself your master. Commissioner Pravin Lal, the UN Declaration of Rights. On a scale of 1 to buying firearms as an anti-Second Amendment leftist, pretty frickin' worried. Well, how worried are you about your house being on fire, when the fire department has been taken over by arsonists? Illegal surveillance, inundation with state propaganda, suppression of free speech, persecution of whistleblowers, Congress that sides with oligarchs, Congress that doesn't protect the American people, government whose main function is to cause endless war and destabilization around the globe. Whatever this is, we already have it. My grandparents and great-grandparents were in the Warsaw camp. Great-grandma, grandma, and grandpa all survived. I'm frickin' worried. I, my partner, and at least 2 family members and a large number of my friends are in danger because of this administration. This administration is a national security threat with possible global consequences. This is the rise of fascism. 10 out of 10, and I'm worried about tech feudalism at 12 out of 10. None of those guys know how to govern. Typical rich people are so full of themselves, they know that they can't be wrong. Meanwhile, they cheat at video games. I didn't know what tech feudalism was, and now that I've googled it, thank you, I'm scared for this too. To continue this quick little digression into this fun new concept, I did find some more messages as a little laugh reprieve before we slip back into our existential dread. I hear you on the techno-feudalism. Marker the Beast crap is coming soon. 20 years ago, I had a driver's education teacher that spent our lunch break going on a lengthy rant about how the end of times were coming, that people were creating chips that could be placed in our arms to pay for things, and that it was the mark of the beast. Sometimes I wonder how she's holding up these days. Let's be honest, she probably voted for Trump. 11 out of 10, especially in combination that we need to combat climate change and really stop with burning petroleum around 2020. Oops. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Extremely worried for my country and my family. I find myself thinking a lot about how much I listened to or paid attention to my grandparents' and great-grandparents' experiences. I'm ashamed to say it wasn't a lot, but I did learn something about history and the slow, subtle moves leading to not-so-subtle moves that the Third Reich had made. When I'm out and about, talking to my hairdresser, who's 23 for example, they have little to no knowledge of World War I, World War II, or geopolitical stances. I mean, who am I to judge? Neither did I, apart from what I learnt in school and those German guys being bad. Now there's no memories of it, no tales of the death or destruction. The fear that we should all feel is buried in generational time and all but forgotten. So here we are, in danger of repeating everything, those who study history being doomed to watch everyone else repeat it. Fascism? Maybe. Russian-style authoritarianism backed by an oligarchy? I mean, we're already there, baby. I'm just gonna leave this here. Political science Dr. Lawrence Britt recently wrote an article about fascism called Fascism, Anyone? Studying the fascist regimes of that guy who led the Third Reich, Mussolini in Italy, Franco in Spain, Suharto in Indonesia, and Pinochet in Chile. Dr. Britt found they all had 14 elements in common. He calls these the identifying characteristics of fascism. The excerpt is in accordance with the magazine's policy. The 14 characteristics are as follows. 1. Powerful and continuing nationalism. Fascist regimes tend to make constant use of patriotic mottos, slogans, symbols, songs, and other paraphernalia. Flags are seen everywhere, as are flag symbols on clothing and in public displays. 2. Disdain for the recognition of human rights because of fear of enemies and the need for security. The people in fascist regimes are persuaded that human rights can be ignored in certain cases because of need. The people tend to look the other way or even approve of the gross violation of human rights or long incarcerations of prisoners or even these people losing their lives, either through assassinations or executions. 3. The identification of enemies or scapegoats as a unifying cause. The people are rallied into a unifying, patriotic frenzy over the need to eliminate a perceived common threat or foe, often racial, ethnic, or religious minorities, as well as liberals, communists, socialists, or so-called terror fighters. 4. Supremacy of the military. Even when there are widespread domestic problems, the military is given a disproportionate amount of government funding, and the domestic agenda is neglected. Soldiers and the military service are glamorized. 5. Rampant gender bias. The governments of fascist nations tend to be almost exclusively male-dominated. Under these fascism regimes, traditional gender roles are made more rigid. Opposition to birth control is high, as is homophobia and anti-gay legislation and national policy. 6. Controlled mass media. Sometimes the media is directly controlled by the government, but in other cases the media is indirectly controlled by government regulation or sympathetic media spokespeople and executives. Censorship, especially in wartime, is very common. 7. Obsession with national security. Fear is used as a motivational tool by the government over the masses. 8. Religion and government are intertwined. Governments in these nations tend to use the most common religion in the nation as a tool to manipulate public opinion. Religious rhetoric and terminology is common from government leaders, even when the major tenets of the religion are diametrically opposed to the government's policies or actions. 9. Corporate power is protected. The industrial and business aristocracy of a nation ruled by fascism are often the ones who put the government leaders into power, creating a mutually beneficial business or government relationship and powerful elite. 10. Labor power is suppressed. Because the organizing power of labor is the only real threat to a government like this, labor unions are either eliminated entirely or are severely suppressed. 11. Disdain for intellectuals and the arts. Nations trending towards fascism tend to promote and tolerate open hostility to higher education and academia. It's not uncommon for professors and other academics to be censored or even arrested. Free expression in the arts is openly attacked, and governments often refuse to fund the arts. 12. Obsession with crime and punishment. Under these regimes, the police are given almost limitless power to enforce laws. The people are often willing to overlook police misuses of power or even forgo civil liberties in the name of patriotism. There's often a national police force with virtually unlimited power in these nations. 13. Rampant cronyism and corruption. Regimes of fascism almost always are governed by groups of friends and associates who appoint each other to government positions and use their power and authority to protect their friends from accountability. It's not uncommon in these regimes for national resources and even treasures to be appropriated or even outright stolen by government leaders. And 14. Fraudulent elections. Sometimes elections in nations with fascism are a complete sham. Other times, elections are manipulated by smear campaigns against or even assassination of opposition candidates, use of legislation to control voting numbers or political district boundaries, and manipulation of the media. These nations also typically use their judiciaries to manipulate or control elections. Oh, I'm past worried. The world is changing, and I'm adapting and preparing. I don't know, man. Worried is for when you think it might happen. This crap is happening, and quickly. We're all well past the point of worry now. I'm not worried about it coming here, I'm worried about getting rid of it. Yes, I'm very worried about these people getting $40 billion a year and using it to foment unrest and fund ideological propaganda, and then thinking they're above presidential authority when they get audited. Babe, you could audit them any day by literally going to usapending.gov, where everything Elon uncovered has been publicly available since 2006. But only the stuff that's real, not the stuff that's been roundly disproven and he's then provided no evidence for. I am very worried. I'm from the UK. Seeing the rise of the right in Europe and the US is scary. I fundamentally believe all people's unhappiness is coming from economic inequality, and no leftist governments are actually willing to deal with the problem because they're too content with the status quo. Populism, sound bites, and easy wins are things the extreme right is just good at. See, I'll just do an executive order instead of actual policy change through our democratic institutions. Marrying that with the average Joe's lack of understanding of what fascism actually is and how quickly he'd never do that turns to, oh crap, I wish I'd known he was serious, makes it all the scarier. I also believe the UK and US see themselves as the good guys, regardless of the political situation, because of being the allies in World War II. They believe they're immune to real fascism. They're just the patriots who want control back, right? Not realizing that the only people who have stolen control and financial security are the ultra-rich. Not immigrants, not poor people on welfare, and not trans people. I don't know if the world is going to look recognizable in 5 to 10 years in the West. So, to summarize, I'm very worried. This is a valid point. The complacency of people on the left when they do get in and somehow think that just not being involved with fascism is good enough by comparison has been a recurring theme in a lot of the governments struggling with the burgeoning alt-right. I'd also like to say that I understand that the points of view thus far are fairly one-sided. We have to draw from the people who submit answers, and I guess a lot more people have sympathized with and upvoted a certain type of answer. Absolutely I'm worried, but the only things that can be done about it are drastic, life-taking, and changing actions. People haven't reached that level of desperation yet. We're still in the stage that people who put their interests below that of the right-wing party haven't fully realized the ramifications of their actions and how it impacts everything. The left is trying to fight with politics and with fairness, but you don't win a dirty game by playing by the rules. The only way to win fairly is to escalate before they do, which we won't. And fight even dirtier. Also, no. When you're on the side of morality, it's a losing battle against those who'll do anything for power. If this weren't the case, we wouldn't see so many previously progressive nations fall to right-wing extremism and fascism. The paradox of tolerance is being proven in real time, and the only thing left to do is wait and see if we reach a breaking point fast enough and fight hard enough to push back. My money is on no. Our nation has never been usurped like this before. People are still thinking it'll just be another terrible administration, but the signs say otherwise. The paradigm is flipping, and tolerance is a losing battle. We won't adapt, though. That would require us to put ourselves in harm's way for people we see as numbers and not human beings. I want to fight. I want to purge this ideology from the face of the earth and give my being to do so. But there's no such thing as a war won with one life. It's a series of tragic sacrifices that must be paid for an uncertain conclusion that the dead don't have the certainty of knowing. And most in my country are hardly brave enough to step in the line of fire to save others, much less fight against their own families and communities because it's the right thing to do. When I started environmental activism, people always like to say that any battle you fight, you never know if you'll win or not. The civil rights activists didn't know if their efforts would be successful or not, but that didn't stop them from trying. I find the most rewarding thing about joining groups fighting for something is that you have this shared sense of purpose, and hell, even if you don't succeed, you have important people in your life who share your struggle. I just hope I'm dead wrong. I'd rather be embarrassed and thought of as a worrywart than be right. Might pay to be a little concerned since he's dismantling the current government structure and centralizing everything to him. His cabinet members are loyalist stooges, not people experienced in the agencies he's having them lead. Dismantling government information and research to keep us in the dark. You know, those old warning signs. Oh, extremely. The most worried I've ever been about anything in my 40-plus years. Hey everyone, I'm gonna just disappear out into the woods. I don't need y'all and your governments. I grew up off the grid in the woods and I guess I'll end up back there. This crap is sideways. Would you date someone with zero relationship or bedroom experience? Why or why not? Of course I would. I'm not about to pass up the chance to have someone say, "You were the best I ever had," and have it be factually accurate. I'd do it, then we'd have something in common. My partner and I were each other's first real relationship, so we were both pretty inexperienced. I personally think it was really nice that we had the opportunity to figure out what we liked together. Sure I would. I could probably lead them into believing that my pickle is the right size. Yes, everyone's got to start somewhere. Of course, I'm attracted to the person, not their experience in the bedroom. Plus, that might even be interesting. Sure, don't see why not. I've never resented teaching. I lost my virginity at 25 to one of the sweetest and most attractive women I've ever met. She was 26 at the time and had a fair bit of experience when it came to relationships. She was one of those girls that was basically never single. We went on a date and had an amazing time. I told her that I had very little experience, but I never actually told her that I'd never kissed a girl. I walked her home, and when she saw I was hesitating, she basically subtly told me to kiss her and then invited me upstairs, and we eventually ended up doing the deed. I went from a guy who'd never kissed a girl to a guy who'd lost his V-plates in a matter of hours. 10 years later, married with 2 kids, we still do the deed 3 to 4 times a week, and according to her, I'm the best lover she ever had. There you have it. Some people don't really give a crap about experience. As a 30-year-old virgin, these replies are giving me some hope. I don't really care since you can always learn and get better. People should never expect it to be the best with someone the first time they do it. It takes practice. I'm currently 2 years into a relationship with someone who had no previous relationships and no experience in the boudoir. Hands down the healthiest relationship and best adult-rated fun of my life. I was never bothered by his lack of experience, just surprised that such an amazing person could be single for so long. I adore him, and I very much hope that he'll be the one. The narrator didn't do the deed until his mid-20s, and unless every person I've been with since then has lied to me, I don't think that stopped me from putting in a good performance from time to time. On the other side of the coin, finally losing your V-plates doesn't unlock superpowers and make it easier to get some next time either, so don't go thinking it will. No, I wouldn't date someone like that. My wife wouldn't like it. I started dating a 31-year-old woman when I was 26. She had never been kissed and just didn't seem particularly interested in a love life. Nonetheless, she was willing to let me take her out. 4 months later, she was no longer a virgin. 6 years later, we've lived together for 4 years and are engaged to be married. She's the best kiss and best bedroom romp I've ever had. She's not the dirtiest one I've ever had, but the emotional connection overrides everything else when we're in the moment. It's amazing how much attachment can contribute to the quality of the deed. She's also the most easygoing partner I've ever had, and it's the relationship I've had to work the least to make functional. Because of the stability and maturity she already had by getting to 31 with total independence, she was an ideal partner, and our lives meshed together effortlessly. Sure, it could have gone either way. She might have been super clingy and emotionally stunted, but as fate would have it, she was the perfect woman for me. Don't discount someone with no experience. They might surprise you. Sure, I date a person I feel romantically connected to. Their experience is largely irrelevant. Of course, if I truly liked them for their personality, we could get through the physical stuff together. Also, just because someone hasn't done something before doesn't mean they can't be great at it. If I'm attracted to someone, I'll give it a shot. Yes, because I believe no one should be rejected from entry-level positions due to lack of experience. I don't know, but if someone seems obsessed with not doing it by their mid-20s, at a point it's mentally hurting them. Based on this one guy's account I'm looking at, this guy's posts are somehow related to how he's eligible but never gets to do it. Like, come on man, you don't need to lose your V-plates to be accepted. Yes, people will always judge you, but bro, if everyone in your friend circle judges you for who you are and confuses doing it with being mature, you should change your friends, because believe me, they'll always let you down. There are many other things to do in life other than that, and don't let that one thing pull you down, and probably I'll sound bitter, but you should consider seeking therapy before things get worse. Also, as a friendly opinion, never let "I'm a virgin at 24" thoughts pull you down. It will just make things worse for you and only you. Yes, I'd date someone like that. Why? Because I'm a virgin that's never been in a relationship either, so why would I judge someone for being in the same boat as me?
Sir, this is the internet. We all have zero experience here.
I'm not a young person. In fact, I'm quite old at 46. I would not date another 46-year-old with no experience. But if I were in my 20s or possibly even 30s, I might. I'm around the same age, and while it wouldn't be a hard no for me, I'd definitely have a lot more reservations about the relationship going forward than I otherwise would. It's not so much the lack of experience, it's that someone in their 40s with absolutely no experience doesn't exist in a vacuum. Whether the majority of the people in this group want to admit it or not, that person is going to have some issues. Maybe they're issues I'd be willing to work through with them, and maybe not. It would be a case-by-case basis. But guiding someone in their 40s through their first relationship is definitely not something I'd jump into without some serious reservations. Well, if this thread has taught me one thing, it's that I'm never telling anyone about my inexperience when I start dating. I'm in my 30s and I've never done the deed. I've had a lot going on in my life. I was always busy taking care of my health or the health of those I loved. I've never lacked attention from the opposite side, and I'm actually fairly good at the first stages of a budding romance. I just never got past the first steps because at first I felt like I had some things to figure out, while later in life I didn't feel comfortable due to my inexperience. Lately, I've been looking to start dating because my health issues are starting to wane, and I have too much love to just keep it to myself, family, and friends. I'd also love kids at some point in my life. My own or adopted. It's not easy to be confident in who you are when you feel judged by society for your life choices and your life path until this point. Still, I do try to be, and I'm sure that I'll find someone once I put in the effort. I won't tell them beforehand about my inexperience though. That much is obvious after looking at the other answers. I hate how so many people think that you can't be emotionally mature or that there's something wrong with you if you haven't had the whoopee at a certain age. Honestly, F off. I wouldn't want to date those people either. I'm looking for someone kind and open-minded anyway. Someone who's open and understanding to the path I've walked thus far. Don't let these people stop you either. My friend is an amazing and decent-looking guy. He's very shy and worked hard to put himself out there. He got his first girlfriend when he turned 30 and they make an awesome couple. You just have to put in some work and you'll find someone willing to give you a chance. I feel like I'm the only person in this group who's leaning towards no. I mean, I wouldn't shoot them down before getting to know them just on that, but for the most part, I'm not sure that I could see it working out. Just on the romantic aspect, I've wasted a lot of time teaching some men how to be decent, caring boyfriends, and honestly, it really wears you down and runs the risk of codependency. Although the narrator is on team give people a chance, it does have to be acknowledged that in a lot, but not all cases, maybe some people haven't gotten lucky because of other aspects of their personality or how they treat other people. So I think although I lean towards being fine with it, really slow down the dating process and get to know someone first to build genuine attraction and desire if the potential for it is there. Don't jump into anything. Agreed. It's not a hard no, but I'd definitely have some pause too. I'm in my mid-30s and a hetero man, and I'm married, so this is all hypothetical, and I feel like after a few dates, there'd be a need to have a very frank conversation about the whys of this woman getting to her late 20s, I'm not going to date anyone younger than that, or 30s or early 40s, without any bedroom or relationship experience, because that seems like fertile ground for potential incompatibilities. Getting this deep into their adult life without doing it suggests the possibility of major religious hang-ups. I'm a super-duper atheist, so that's not going to work. or that they have a dangerously controlling family, prolonged mental health struggles, or all of the above. Those things aren't immediate deal breakers in every context, but they're reason for concern. I'd also worry about the lack of relationship experience signifying a lack of communication skills within a relationship, or a lack of perspective about the scale of conflict, asymmetrical jealousy or asymmetrical worries about fidelity, or an expectation for the relationship to be the panacea that solves all the issues in their life, or that they'd be so thankful for the romantic attention that they wouldn't know how to feel comfortable advocating for their own needs and wants within the relationship. I'd be looking for someone with whom I could share my life and continue learning to grow as a person. Ideally, that person could meet me at or near my own level. I don't think I'd be comfortable feeling responsible for powering the personal growth of two people. On the flip side, I've been with my wife for 11 years. If I were to suddenly be single, I'd expect people to be cautious about me because they worry I wouldn't be able to adapt to communicating and sharing physical and emotional intimacy with a new, different person. That's understandable. It seems like a valid concern that would require quite a bit of candor from me for an imaginary partner to make a commitment. Personally, I wouldn't do it at this stage of my life because I've had a lot of experience and I'd want someone on the same page. 0 bedroom experience? Yeah, that's fine with me. 0 romantic experience? Nah. Relationships are a lot of hard work, and I worry that people need to learn that before they're ready to be half of a good committed relationship. For context, I'm at the point of my life where I'm looking for a serious relationship. There's nothing wrong with dating someone casually with no romantic experience. You've got to start somewhere. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I'm staying celibate until marriage. It's a religious decision, so I'd actually prefer to marry someone with no experience as well. Speaking as someone who waited until after marriage, I feel obliged to point out that this is a risky strategy. It can work out, but it's a fairly big gamble on an aspect of married life that many people view as rather important. Depending on her age, I'd be interested in some insight into her mindset. Why has she gone most of her adult life without love or intimacy? Was it trauma, cultural or religious reasons, depression, or some other form of mental affliction? I'm still open to it, but I think I deserve to know a little bit about what I'm getting myself into. I mean, some people are just unlucky, man. Puts on wizard hat. I've dated a completely inexperienced person before, and to be honest, no thanks. There's nothing wrong with not having experience, but it's not for me. I'd definitely still be their friend and give advice if they need it, though. Yep, sure, I care about the personality. Imagine asking a bunch of people on the internet as if they aren't virgins themselves. I'm 63, so no, it's probably a no from me. If your answer is no, then just do the deed with them first and then you can date them since they now have some bedroom experience. I would, because I was the person with no experience past the socially acceptable age. I didn't have my first real date until I was 23, and I didn't do the deed until I was 26. If my first couple of partners hadn't been willing to take a chance, well, now I'd be a 30-year-old virgin. However, for a lot of the people with this issue that I see, I really don't think your problem is a lack of experience. Your problem is a lack of confidence. If you've convinced yourself that you're completely undesirable and no one will ever want to date you, you're not going to project that you're in your interactions with people, whether you mean it or not. There's nothing attractive or appealing about trying to get to know someone who can't stop talking about how disgusting and pitiable they are. I used to be that way. I believed I was too fat, too ugly, too awkward, and it showed. There's a reason it took me 3 years to go from first date ever to losing the V-card. I had to learn to be confident on my own, or at least pretend to be confident. Do I still sometimes wonder why people find me attractive when I'm fat, loud, and impulsive? Sure. But I don't say that. Instead, I take a flattering, angled selfie that shows off the cleave. I say in my dating profile what my body type is without being self-depreciating about it, and I put every ounce of self-confidence that I wish I actually had into my self-description. I've even had friends tell me things they like about me or find attractive about me to add to my profile, if I'm not feeling especially kind to myself while updating it. You have to fake it till you make it. It gets easier the more you do it, trust me. Yeah, as I said near the start of the video, you don't magically turn into a more confident or dateable person once you've popped the cherry. Maybe there's something to not having such an aura of desperation about it after the first time, but I think even then, some of us have big old dry stretches that prove you're not just set after the first time. Personally, I wouldn't do it. There's a huge power imbalance there, and I would feel like I was taking advantage at my age. If I were younger, say my mid to early 20s, I wouldn't have much of an issue if the person was around my same age. There's a lot of hurdles to overcome when someone's still quite new to relationships and intimacy, and people generally become attached to their first in a way that I think I'd be uncomfortable with. I personally know exactly what I'm looking for in a partner, and since I'm a no-touch person, I could basically ruin that person's chance at a healthy relationship down the line as preferences can be altered by their first. No touch can be incredibly hard on an intimate partner, let alone someone brand new to it. I'd rather not do that to a person. No, I get that there's always going to be someone's firsts, but I'm not interested in being that, romantically or in the bedroom. There are clearly other people writing in who don't have a problem with it. Go date them. I also wouldn't date someone without work experience, driving experience, or experience living outside their parents' house. I'd want to date a full-grown, experienced adult, not a college freshman. Probably not. Most people my age have whoopee and romantic experience, so I guess I wouldn't want to be someone's first at this point in my life.
I'm too old to be dealing with that crap. There are just certain things that need to be experienced and can't be taught in order to grow as a person.
Nope, I'm in my 50s. Anyone age appropriate for me would have serious emotional difficulties if they had no experience at all. So people are really shy. I know 2 people over 25 years old with no experience that would love to get one chance at least. Probably not. For one thing, as I'm getting older, it's getting weirder that they have none. Maybe they have a good reason. Maybe there's a ton of trauma. I try to be a kind and patient person, but honestly, if I can date someone who has that crap together, that's preferable. Also, relationships are hard. I don't really want to have to hold someone's hand through the first time they get jealous. The boudoir is a rich topic. I don't really want to guide someone through it. They probably don't know what they like, or how to be good at it. I don't idolize virgins or innocents. I don't want to screw with someone who doesn't know what they like. Not personally. I'd feel too responsible for how I'd affect that person, emotionally feeling like the experienced one out of the 2. That's not to say there's anything wrong with being inexperienced. I'd try to take as much personal responsibility over your own feelings when it happens. No. There's a reason why that would be the case for someone at my age, and most of the potential reasons are also deal breakers for me. The rest are just situations I'd rather not put up with. I also don't see the appeal of being someone's first. Some people find excitement in being a teacher, but I do not. I'd find it tiresome.
Nah, I'm too messed up to be someone's first love.
Sure, why would I not want that? If anything, it's even better being someone's first for everything. Heck, if it's going to work between us, I'd even prefer to erase my own experiences to be her first as well, so we both experience everything together for the first time. The only argument against that I could think of is that inexperience can be a turn-off for some people, but it definitely isn't for me. I guess for me, if someone were totally inexperienced in their late 20s or beyond, my main concerns are as follows. First, that they're only into me because I'm the first person that said yes. Like, I have enough self-esteem issues because of my own body image. If they're desperate and just want to jump onto a warm body, any warm body, I don't want to deal with any of that. That's not someone who would actually care about my well-being. Second, are they somewhere on the ace spectrum? I don't want to date an asexual. I generally want to have an authentic physical attraction that's mutual. See point 1. And third, is this a case where there's a serious mental health issue afoot, especially untreated ones? 4, are there major computability issues, like is this a religious person? I did it once and I wouldn't recommend it. It put a lot of stress on me. Your results may vary. Depends on your age. If you're in your teens, sure, you're both relatively inexperienced. If you're in your early 20s, maybe. Being a virgin into college is okay, but being someone's first experience can be possibly disastrous. If you're in your late 20s, probably not. This is where you'll run into someone becoming way too attached after you've done it for the first time. You might not escape. And if you're 30 or older, hell no. Everything stated above will be to the extreme. It will not end well. Heck no. I don't have time to explain the hamster, the zucchini, and the 2 Germans in my corner, or why all the TV remotes are covered in lubricant. I'm just trying to smash. I'd be bothered more by the lack of romantic experience than the other stuff. There are some basic relationship do's and don'ts that would be frustrating to teach someone. I'd say it's more about the person rather than that person's past experiences. Most dating do's and don'ts really come down to common sense. Don't pressure anything, don't focus on yourself too much, show interest in them, and don't be bland. The sad fact is that there's a lot of people where it's just not clicking for them. Those are the people you're probably more likely to see in a toxic or bad relationship. The narrator is more or less in agreement here. Although there are one or two things about dating that can be more of a minefield than regular friendship, getting more relationship experience doesn't guarantee that you won't have conflict from time to time. It's how you deal with problems that's important, not avoiding conflict. I would only do it if they were very clearly emotionally mature. You don't want all the problems that come with that first crush. Yes, because I'm on the same boat anyways and also waiting until marriage, so it would be nice to have someone that's the same too. Huh. I'd say yes because I too have zero of either of those. Well, it depends. Do you mean they've never done anything before, or that they literally have zero experience with the subject at all? As in, they didn't do the education for it in school, don't know the names of body parts, don't know what transmissible diseases are, because if it's that extreme, then yeah, it would probably be a no. Yes, because I'm on the same boat anyway and also waiting until marriage, so it'd be nice to have someone that's in the same boat. No, I'm not interested in being a teacher at this point. To me, it's an adult skill that we expect people to have already gained, like how to do laundry or manage their finances reasonably well. My partner had never done the deed before me, and to be honest, even his first time, he was better in bed than some other people I'd slept with who had done the deed several times a week, and he's only gotten better with time. Absolutely not. After age 25 or maybe 30, and that's pushing it, lack thereof is indicative of differences that are simply too great to overcome. Nope, been there, done that. It was awful. He blamed everything on his inexperience. He used it as a crutch. No romantic experience means no baggage to drag down a new relationship. No bedroom experience? Why is that a thing? Wouldn't matter. If they don't know, you teach them. If you both don't know, then you figure it out together. That's usually the last thing on my mind when I want to interact with someone. However, I'm getting up there in years, so age is a concern. It's amazing how anyone under 25 looks 12 to me now, and how 12 has never been so alien. What was the quickest buzzkill to a room full of happy people? Back when I waited tables, there was a guy walking to his table. He had a massive heart attack and hit the floor. EMTs said he was gone before he hit the ground. I've never seen a restaurant go so silent so quickly. A friend of mine was attending a Christian Pentecostal summer camp a few years ago with some high school students and other adult leaders. For anyone who's unfamiliar with Pentecostal youth camps, the evening church services can get pretty lively and charged with emotion. People being slain in the spirit, speaking in tongues, lots of worship and confessing sins. That sort of thing. There were probably a couple of hundred students, so things might have gotten chaotic. Anyway, my friend and one of the other adult leaders got pulled on stage to confess sins to the audience. Not sure who thought this was a good idea, but maybe it wasn't planned. And the other adult leader, a nice guy in his 20s, newly married, confesses to the packed auditorium of high schoolers hyped up on Jesus that he used to do the deed with his dog. The evening service pretty much ended after that. My company had a pizza party meeting for a particular department. The scuttlebutt was that it was a thank you for a third-quarter project completion. The department of 35 people were excited for the attaboys and the pizza. After the lunch, the shoe dropped. They were all being laid off because even though they finished the project on time for this long-time customer, the customer had signed a contract with another company and was leaving. Unbelievably crap move by management. With a few years under my belt now, I know that pizza seems to be a common way to give bad news to employees at other places. When I was a kid, there were about 6 to 8 families in our area who were a good group of friends. Regular holidays together, kids all close friends too, and in the same classes at school. The backstory was that one of the families kept noticing money going missing from a drawer in the master bedroom. They had an older son who was getting the blame but was denying it. Fast forward a few weeks and it's their younger kid's birthday and everyone's at their house. Usual script was the kids' party would be late afternoon, then in the evening the kids would end up playing games in the same bedroom as the adults had a few drinks. Kids were happy because we got to stay up late with all our friends, and parents got to have a few guilt-free drinks. This night was going on as normal until we were all shuffled off and home earlier than usual. We got the full story the next day. Once the kids were out of the way, the owners of the house had turned on their TV and pressed play on a video. On screen, there was CCTV of the bedroom where the money had been going missing. Clearly in the video, you could see the wife of one of the other couples sitting in that very room, going into the drawer and taking money. Apparently, they switched off the video and said, "What you saw is exactly what it looked like," and asked that couple to leave. Everyone else left shortly after. Yep, that's about time to hit the old dusty trail. Hopefully it just meant that the one group of parents were ostracized, rather than their kids also being excluded and the adult friend group fully breaking up. 800 guys in a grocery warehouse being told it was going to be automated in 5 years. One fella yelled out asking if we fought the robots and won whether we could keep our jobs. Probably not, since his job has been terminated. I was on a Chicago to New York flight. We all got on the plane but were delayed taking off due to a heavy storm going on. About 20 minutes in, everyone was still pretty calm until the pilot announces they were working on getting our baggage loaded because it's been sitting on the tarmac this entire time. The entire plane looks out, sees our luggage just sitting there in the pouring rain uncovered, and starts freaking out. The president of our company got completely plastered at our Christmas party. His speech started off funny because he was slurring hard and was playing on it. Then he started talking about how he came from nothing and became something. Then he proceeded to tell us how if it wasn't for us working so hard and keeping our clients happy, he wouldn't have been able to accomplish building his mega mansion for him and his family, nor would he have been able to afford his new Benz. There was some awkward muttering here, followed by him directing us to drink up and enjoy because due to budget cuts, the future Christmas party and bonus budget is cancelled from here on out. Many of my co-workers relied on that bonus. Nobody was impressed. Except for one person, the rest of us quit within the first few months into the new year. Sounds like the owner and MD from my spouse's last job. New cars every few months, paying his kids a salary for doing nothing, flushing cash from the business for personal home improvements. They had 100 employees tops. They all worked like dogs. Their Christmas party? Held in the office where everyone had to bring in food to share. Record profits? Huh. Thanks for the work, suckers. Check out my kid's new car. Ended up losing lots of skilled workers to a rival company. I hope he craps a hedgehog. I used to work for this new performance hall in New York City, and one morning during our morning meetings, one of our managers thought she was being unique and uplifting by ending our meeting with forcing us to say, "One thing I'm grateful to the company for is..." All 30 of us were pretty happy to just start the day since it was a beautiful day out, but that soured our mood real quick. A bunch of people got hostile with answers like, "The wonderful healthcare we're given, we have none," and "the magnificent hours. The hours are crap and inconsiderate." The whole company of more than 60 people gathered at a product unveiling and cheerleading event where we were expecting surprising news like bonuses maybe. Instead, we were informed that the least senior and biggest jerk were promoted to partner. Everything went downhill from there. Party at this one woman's house. Everyone was talking and happy. They mention a local business burned down, and a drunk guy yells, "Must have been Jewish lightning." The entire party goes silent, awkwardly glancing between him and the hostess, who just so happens to be Jewish. The man looks around, thinks for a moment, and realizes his mistake. They didn't hear him, so he yells even louder, "Must have been Jewish lightning." I was watching Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon in a movie theater when it came out in the early 1970s. The projector died during a fight scene. Similar experience. I'd already seen Batman with Jack Nicholson as the Joker. I went again with my uncle, who wasn't much older than me, and a few of his friends. You remember that scene where the Joker, who has yet to be seen as the Joker, is talking to the crime boss who tried to have him killed? The boss, Grissom, calls Joker Jack, his real name, and Joker responds with, "Jack's dead. You can call me," steps out of the shadows for the big reveal, Joker. At Jack's dead, everyone watched the film melt onto the camera. I laughed my butt off, but everyone there who hadn't already seen the movie lost their damn minds. I actually thought I was going to witness a riot. I was on a team of about 15 people for a special project for a regional internet service provider. During the bi-weekly team meeting, the manager was super pumped about how far ahead of schedule we were due to some new processes we came up with. After about 20 minutes of attaboys, the manager concluded with telling us we were all being laid off, in the same tone of voice she used for the whole meeting, issuing a bunch of praise. Most of us awkwardly laughed for a couple of seconds thinking she was joking. She wasn't. I used to be a courier, had the same customers every day. One of the customers was an online store that had about 50 employees. The store was very successful and bought for about 8 figures by a bigger international competitor. The couple that owned the website organized a party with food and music, talked excitedly about their successes and praised themselves, only to go on and fire 90% of the employees in that company. The bride throwing up on herself and the dance floor during the first dance. She tried to hold it back, but the groom just pointed her toward the dance floor and she let her rip. It was impressive. Drinking with colleagues from work. A guy was needling me and a friend about how out of shape we were. It's fair and light-hearted, right? Suddenly my friend blurts out, "Yeah, at least we have attractive wives." The needling guy's wife was standing right there. Wow, that guy really played the reversey jackass Uno card, didn't he? And I don't really know who won this particular game. Feels like everyone lost, including the bystanders awkwardly staring literally everywhere else after that final burn went out. Bad snowstorm started about 4 a.m. a few years ago. My co-workers and I were texting each other thinking, no way they could make us come into our job today, we're non-essential workers. We're all home waiting for the email to go out regarding whether or not our boss would give us the day off. Email finally goes out around 7:30 a.m. saying that we'd have a shorter day, but everyone must show up for work by 9. So, I layered up, cleaned off my car, shoveled out my parking spot, and headed to work on very precarious roads. I got to work on time and was greeted by my co-workers, who were all pretty happy just to have not gotten into an accident on the way over. All of the clients and meetings had been cancelled, so there was a party-like atmosphere. Just as we were talking about playing charades, we get another email from the boss saying because road conditions were so bad, they were closing the agency after all and everyone had to go home. This was 20 minutes after we'd all gotten there. I've never seen more than 20 people all scream, "Are you fricking kidding me?" at the same time before. It was absurd and everyone was mad. In Portugal during the World Cup, got there early to find a street bar in the centre with a big screen. The place was soon packed. England started really well and everyone's singing and laughing. All of a sudden, the bar up the road erupts into massive cheers. Lots of people go onto the road to see. Apparently someone just dropped an entire tray of drinks? Huh. We all laugh and go back to watching the game. 10 seconds later, England scores. Our bar erupts and we spill into the street. The bar on the road is kind of silent now. That's weird. The game starts again and the bar up the road starts screaming again. Nothing in the game? What's going on? People look back up the road, can't quite work it out. Then a really bad tackle goes in and the penny finally drops. Our bar's TV is the only one using satellite and all the others have cable. So our feed is about 20 seconds behind everywhere else. Every exciting moment is audible about 20 seconds before we get to see it. I've never seen a bar empty so fast in all of my life. One day at work, we had an hour meeting followed by a planned pizza party as a reward for meeting some safety goal. They'd been telling us all week not to worry about food because they were getting pizza. Well, after the meeting, we were sitting around waiting for said pizza to get there when our boss came in and told us there was a failure of communication and no one actually ordered said pizza. If you want to see 50 factory workers go from excited to murder-ready in less than a second, that's what you tell them. I worked at a casino for a couple of years and the joke is totally true. How do you make 500 old people want to kill you? You yell bingo. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was bartending on one of our restaurant's busiest days. The place was packed and a man and boy of about 9 couldn't stop wrestling and giggling. The man, about 30 years old, started repeatedly yelling, "I'm gonna grab your wee-wee." And yeah, the whole place dropped dead silent. The mother grabs the kid and says they need to chill the F out. Every family reunion when one aunt gets drunk and brings up my other aunt who died. Happens every time. Not exactly a room, but our plane landed home after my company spent a year in Iraq. Our company commander previously told us to tell our families they shouldn't come out to the tarmac to welcome us back because it would be a fricking circus and you'll just see them later anyway. Stepping off the plane, who are the first and only people we see? Our fricking commander's wife, 3 kids, parents, grandparents, brothers, and numerous cousins and friends. That guy was the worst. Family gathering was going great until the host realized she was missing thousands of dollars worth of jewelry. She started accusing everyone of being thieves until her husband said he put it away without telling her. In grad school, we were gathered in a room to hear about how the last term of classes in the program was going to be cut due to a new law regarding educator requirements for the state. Everyone was stoked because it was going to save us like $5,000 to $8,000. Then they told us that due to state budget cuts, our total tuition was going to double. A guy decided to pop the question to his girlfriend at a work holiday party. She said no. Both parties began to cry inconsolably, all the guys in the room tried to cheer up the guy with their tales of woe, all the women in the room took the woman's side and did whatever the female version of the above was. Went from a fairly happy event to a complete disaster within minutes. Plus side was, while all of this crap was going down, nobody was hitting the buffet, so I just cleaned the frick up. I guarantee you someone else has told this story with the addendum of, and then that frickin' jerk just went to the buffet. I'm not gonna lie, I love the idea of the absolute social mayhem going on, and this one frickin' guy just hoofing it to the buffet and eating everything straight out of the dishes there, taking complete advantage of the situation and piecing out on the drama. It's glorious. When the boss got drunk at the Christmas party and then let slip that there were going to be layoffs coming in the new year. We had to work on a holiday, but management didn't, so there was nobody to unlock the building. We waited outside from 7 a.m. till 7:45 and were told that if we didn't get in by 8, we could go home. 7:55, our manager shows up and lets us in, telling them they're going to be let go just before Christmas. You know, Walmart is really bad about letting their seasonal people go the same week as Christmas after spending 90 days building them up as having a chance of being more than a temp. I wasn't there, but when the Metallica concert in New Delhi was cancelled, 30,000 fans were already at the venue, super excited and waiting for more than 3 hours for the concert to begin. While they were waiting the said 3+ hours, some of the security barricades at the stage gave way and couldn't be fixed. So the organizers cited safety issues and just cancelled the whole thing. I think they were eventually arrested for a breach of trust because the whole thing sounds shady, to be honest. India is not exactly a hot destination for big musicians. So when Metallica came over for the first concert in India ever, people flew in from all over the country just to attend. Metallica's pretty popular in India as well. I hear angry fans rushed the stage and broke the equipment after the cancellation was announced. Camp. 150 kids headed to an ice skating rink. Everyone's laughing, cheering, and having fun. Sitting on school buses for 2 hours. The place is closed. Instant chaos, screaming, and general unhappiness. Took us back the next day, but still the angriest I've ever seen 150 kids be. This is more of a mild story, but still very uncomfortable. It was at work during break. A whole bunch of us were outside smoking. One kid asks my coworker if he has any kids and says that he likes to dress up as Santa for the young ones. So my coworker tells him, "I have a daughter that just turned 20, and he replied with, "Well, she can definitely come and sit on my lap." The silence after that sentence was so painful. Everyone ended up going back inside after that. It was super awkward. In 2007, Mars Volta played at the White River Amphitheater. They got through about 4 songs and then quit in a rage on stage. Turns out the guitarist was having speaker issues and someone threw a bottle of wee-wee on him. He smashed his guitar on the speakers and walked off mid-song. The lead singer says, "This is what you get when you build an amphitheater on an Indian burial ground. I'll give 10 grand to anyone who brings me the head of the motherfricker who threw that crap on us." Security ran out to escort them off, and we had a full hour-and-a-half wait until RHCP came out. That crap was sour. Also, this is all available to watch on YouTube. I didn't witness it personally, but I heard about it and the aftermath. Back in 2006, an army unit was being extended beyond its original 12-month deployment to Iraq. This was the first extension of the surge and before it became common. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld traveled to the unit's home base to address the families of the soldiers and let them know why these soldiers weren't coming home, and the few that had made it home were having to turn around and go back. It wasn't a horribly happy crowd to start with, but they were willing to hear him out and be respectful. Apparently he came in incredibly conceited about the whole situation and basically made a comment along the lines of, "They're soldiers and they'll do what they're told and like it." He was completely lacking in empathy and understanding, and just expected everyone to accept and support the decision. This comment and demeanor quickly turned the crowd hostile, and the town hall was quickly cancelled and Rumsfeld had to be escorted out by his security detail. I was helping to run a Christian disco when I was a teenager back in the 80s. Everyone was happy and dancing until I innocently played Tainted Love. The entire dance floor cleared in seconds because apparently Tainted Love is a gay anthem. I'd like to know what other songs they were okay with if Tainted Love was too gay for them. It was the party for the cast of a musical I was in during my senior year. We were all having a great time and decided to watch a video of the performance that the host's mum managed to record. She had permission to record the show. In the middle of the recording, you could hear the host's mum whispering while recording it. It was obvious she wasn't aware the phone picked up her voice. She was talking about how her son deserved the leading role, not the guy who was actually cast. She was basically heckling his every move during the show. The party ended pretty quickly after that. The poor lead guy was really hurt. He wanted to go to school for theatre, but that event really discouraged him. But he got the main part, and she was clearly biased. That just makes me so sad. Another talent discouraged from following their dreams. 50th anniversary for my old rugby club. People were flying in from all around the world, 150 plus people ranging from late teens to 70s. We went on a big pub crawl combined with my dad's 60th birthday the night before the big dinner. One of the old boys fell over outside the local pub, hit his head on the concrete and was knocked out. The ambulance was called and we helped him get into it, explained what happened to the medics, and off he went with his brother to the hospital. We laughed it off and went back to drinking. By far not the first time a player has gone to hospital after a night out. The night after at the big suit and tie dinner, one of the old boys was wondering where he and his brother were, so he called the brother and asked if he was okay. He wasn't. He'd had a brain aneurysm and had little to no chance of surviving. A room full of more than 150 tough-as-nails men and women went from having the time of their life to being pretty much dead silent. He died 4 days after. I was in a local, independently run bookshop in my hometown, and it was full of people happily searching the labyrinth of books, and the owner was talking to one particular shopper about World War II history books. They seemed to be having a proper good chinwag, and it was kind of obvious that most of the other shoppers were tuned into their conversation. After all, it was a very interesting talk they were having about history. Right up until the shopper said something along the lines of, there's actually a lot of evidence to suggest that all that stuff with the Jews didn't exactly happen. The tension in the room went up so damn quick I could smell it. It felt like we were all walking underwater. Then the shop owner freaking exploded and threw the guy out the shop. We all perused the shelves in silence. I was at a really fun party which turned sour when one of the people in the room punched his pregnant girlfriend for no apparent reason. He mysteriously fell down a flight of stairs about 20 seconds later, with no witnesses to what happened. We were discussing road safety with the headmaster. One of the pupils pointed out that there had been a car crash right in front of her, just as she'd been about to step out onto the road earlier that week, which had been really scary. The headmaster laughed and asked her what she was wearing and if it had been her fault. Absolute silence for 10 seconds as he squirmed and then mumbled, were you wearing a ball gown, or as if that had been what it meant. Pathetic and excruciating. A 50-year-old man to a teenage girl. This story took place my freshman year of high school. I was in an extremely small 5th period theatre course with about 10 or 15 people in it. We were a very well-behaved class that acted more like a family than anything else. It was fun. However, one day we got a substitute teacher who I'll call D. D was old. She had short white hair, a permanent scowl, and always wore a jacket that looked like a duster. That particular day she was angry, and you could tell. She had a difficult time with the computer playing the movie, so she was yelling, fussing, and blaming her ignorance on us. In our class, we had several tech-savvy people, but she refused all help because we were too, quote, risky. Eventually, she does get it to work, giving us the chance to ignore her. Around 10 minutes into the film, someone realized she hasn't said anything in a while, so they look over and see her eyes open, still and unresponsive. They turned to the rest of the class, who were still focused on the movie, and alerted them. Everyone began to freak out. People are taking flash pictures of her, waving, trying to get her to respond. Eventually, she woke up and yelled at us and then went back to sleep with her eyes open once more. It was the freakiest situation ever, but the good news is that I never saw that sub working for my school again. I was once at a disco on Hogmanay in Scotland, and the DJ played God Save the Queen instead of Flower of Scotland at midnight. He was lucky he made it out alive. What was the funniest comeback you've ever heard in a serious situation? My father was a cop, and his partner was testifying about witnessing a substance deal in his rearview mirror. The defense attorney, presumably trying to undermine his testimony, asks, "Typically, how far can you see through the rearview mirror?" "Well, I saw the moon once." Every so often, people at my university chalk up the concourse to advertise upcoming events. Since this is against the university code to write on the concourse, everyone does it late at night. The city police normally run a couple of bike cops, who tend to be D-bags, through campus to make sure that everything is kept neat and tidy. A friend of mine was writing on the concourse one night and got caught by a couple of bike cops. They stopped him, and one of them asked him, "What are you doing out here with the sidewalk chalk? Does mommy not trust you with paint?" To which my friend replied, "What are you doing here on bikes? Does your chief not trust you with a car?" It was an accident, but my friend effed up a standard greeting when he met his girlfriend's coworker and said, "Oh hi, I've heard all but good things about you." She didn't notice, and I've been dying to use it ever since. I can't find it now, but there's a Reddit comment thread somewhere with a blind guy speaking about his computer setup. Someone says, "I'd love to see your keyboard," and he just replies, "So would I." Fricking stunning. A friend of mine was shoveling snow out of his driveway one day when his neighbor came over while smoking a cig and started complaining that the smoke from my friend's chimney was drifting over to his house and causing his family breathing problems. My friend said, "Well, you smoke," and he replied, "Well, I smoke outside." And my friend said without missing a beat, "So does my chimney." In high school English class, we were doing a quick play acting summary of Oedipus. We chose a few people to play Oedipus, his mum, and some other characters. One of the other characters was played by a normally very reserved and quiet guy. The teacher says, "Okay, start." This quiet guy immediately turns to Oedipus and says, "You mother effer." The guy didn't even get in trouble, it was so funny. Look, he played a character accurately commenting on the deeds of the protagonist. What was she going to punish him for? Also, I guess it's really hard to send someone to detention while clearly holding in laughter. Mean, but unintentionally smart-ass funny. Mr. Hirka was a grumpy art teacher in my junior high that had a wooden leg. One day, this Russian student Igor, who spoke very broken English, was telling a story about how he'd spent hours the night before working on his painting, only to have his younger sister finger paint over it while he was away, so he didn't have it. Mr. Hirka said, "You're pulling my leg, Igor." Igor paused for a second and said, "Oh no, I wouldn't do that, Mr. Hirka. It would fall off." The class erupted, and if I recall correctly, he got a few days of detention for that. My dad asked my mum, "What's the passcode to your phone?" "It's the year I was born." "Huh, I don't see a BC anywhere on this keypad." My mum asked us, "How do you kids get through so much toilet paper? What are you eating?" My brother answered, "Toilet paper."
"If you poop toilet paper, do you still have to wipe?"
Man, this is getting philosophical in here. My grandma came back from the beauty parlor. My grandpa said, "I thought you were going to the beauty parlor." My friend and I were supposed to have a lunch date during work. Instead, his wife had made him a buffalo chicken sandwich to bring from home, leaving me to fend for myself. So I said, really angry, "Oh really? You got your wife to make your lunch for you. How about I give you a sausage meat sandwich?" In case it wasn't obvious with the YouTube-friendly language, I meant my sausage. Anyway, he answered, "Do I look like I'm on a diet?" A buddy of mine was driving through Georgia and got pulled over by a police officer. The police officer came up to the window and told him, "Nobody goes that fast through Georgia." His reply was, "General Sherman did." He found out a police officer can hold you 24 hours without formal charges that night. It was worth it, though. Sometimes I like to tell people, "I hope the rest of your day is as pleasant as you are," and then watch their face as they reason through whether I'm giving them a compliment or insulting them.
The delivery of this line is as important as the line itself. Which one should I do? Poker face or extra happy fake smile?
Guy in Jack in the Box shouted, "Frick the police!" and a random bystander, "Right on, man, Sting's solo work is way better." My brother was being a butthole. My mum called him a son of a bee. He replied, "Can't argue with you there, mum." It took a few seconds, but she got mad. I was at a minor hockey tournament when I was about 8 years old, and my old hockey coach was sneaking a smoke in the men's room when a little boy came in and told him that smoking was bad. He replied with, "So's talking with strangers." My sister was in a bar with friends and noticed a man with cologne on when he walked by. She stops him and sniffs.
"What's that you have on?"
He said, "A rock-solid rooster, but I didn't know you could smell it." She and her friends couldn't stop laughing. That guy had his pick that night. I used to work at an ice cream shop and a guy ordered 2 sundaes. One was vanilla with chocolate syrup and another was coconut with hot fudge. I gave him his sundaes, rang him up, and he roared back, "You didn't mark these, how do I know which one is hot fudge?" And I just replied, "The one that's hot." My boss died on the floor laughing because of my nonchalantness.
My first job was in an ice cream place and a customer asked, "What's your most popular item here?" And I had to answer, "Ice cream."
Grade 10 physics. The coolest guy in class turned around and asked my attractive lab partner, "So why do girls always curl their toes when they finally arrive?" I asked him, "Where did you read that?" I was famous for a week. That was the high point of my high school career. In college, an ex-girlfriend came over to visit. My roommates were getting blazed in the living room. She and I were chilling in my bedroom. She goes into the living room and tells the guys, "It's starting to smell like green herb in my boyfriend's bedroom." And my brilliant roommate answered, "As opposed to what? The smell of him whacking his hog and loneliness?" I was playing Rock of Ages and cursing at my mammoths to knock the other guy's boulder off the edge. My friend opined, "If you keep treating your mammoths so badly, they're just going to leave you." I said, "That shouldn't be a problem. I didn't name any of them Shauna." That was his ex-girlfriend's name. He demanded an apology written in cursive. Last year, I was working as a teacher in our preschool classroom, and this little boy is telling a story, which I can't exactly remember but wasn't altogether daycare appropriate. My co-teacher says, "Excuse me?" And the little boy replies, "Excuse me, did the middle of my sentence interrupt the beginning of yours?" To this day, it still makes me laugh. My cousin was 2 and being potty trained. She talked early and was quite intelligent. The first time she peed in the toilet of her own volition, her mum got all excited. "Oh my gosh, Julia, did you just go potty?" Julia puts her little hands on her hips and says, "Well, it's not lemonade." Oh boy, that's 2 very young kids in a row with more sass and sarcasm than some adults have after long, hard lives. What's getting them so deliciously cynical so young? I kind of love it, but I'm simultaneously glad they're not mine. An angry security guard said, "Are you getting smart with me?" My friend answered, "As if you'd know." I have a buddy of mine who sometimes gets a good rage on, and this was one of the times he handled it perfectly. I was with said friend of mine in his car. He pulls into a space in the parking lot, and as we got out of the car, some harpy lady pulls up and rolls her window down and states, "Hey, I was going to park there." I know, who does that crap, right? Seriously. So my friend plays it cool and says, "Lady, I got here first. Fair and square, I'm sorry." She says, "Oh no, I've been driving around this lot looking for a spot and I saw this one first. You're going to have to move your car." At this point, I'm standing there just thinking, what the frick? Again, my friend states, "Look, I was here first. I'm not moving my car. You're going to have to find somewhere else to park. Stop being rude to people." Those weren't his exact words. I can't remember exactly, but he was being way more polite than he should have been. She says, "Excuse me, my husband is in the car." That was an obvious threat which my friend would have handled. He was a real tough son of a witch. He calmly walked up to her car windows and yells in a very loud voice at her, "Well, maybe you ought to let him drive." I started laughing. So her husband starts getting out of the car. My friend points right at him and says, "If you get out of that car, I'm going to come over there and make you regret it more than marrying this woman. I'm serious. You get out and I'll fricking end you." The woman scoffs at us and rolls up her window and drives off. It was frickin' awesome. Talking to my dad about premarital whoopee and using protection, he said, "If anything, double bag it." I heard that wasn't good. I meant in the sense that it was bad for the rubber's integrity. Dad misinterpreted this, however. "Oh no, you won't feel a thing, but at least she won't be pregnant." I said, "Dude, work is gonna suck tonight," and my colleague said, "Tell me something I don't know." "Alright, I've seen your sister undressed." Science teacher asked, "Okay class, now name any form of contraceptive you know." And the first answer was Crocs. Safe to say it was the best joke I've heard in a while. Drunken barbecue and our scruffy neighbor who's always with his dog comes over. The dog's being a star and humping everyone's leg, then she sits and starts licking her biff. I said, "Wish I could do that." And he replied, sharp as frick, gleefully pointing, "Okay, I'll pin her down." There's a safe whoopee club at Ohio State University that gives out 50 Johnnies for about $5 if you join it and go to a seminar. The presenter was female and asks, "Now, before you do the deed, what's the first thing you need?" The guy next to me said, "To get rigid?" No, I meant consent. And I remember nothing else from that presentation. "You need consent before you get hard? Well, crap." That would have been a good t-shirt to wear to the seminar. Consent gets me solid. The reply of Messi to Ronaldo's comments. Ronaldo told the media that he was sent by the god of football to teach people how to play. After being hassled by the press, Messi immediately replied, "I don't remember sending him." To this day, in the debate as to who is the current greatest footballer, I bring up this line. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My friend said, "I've got a huge sausage, it's like the Loch Ness Monster down there." I answered, "Yeah, Nobody's actually ever seen it. Got a few laughs from everyone around us. Security guard yelled at me, "Sir, you can't climb the flagpole." I said, "Yeah, I know, I just tried." Not the best one, but we'll all wind up in this situation where it's needed. Plus, it's my dad's proudest moment. He was having car trouble and was blocking some D-bag in a convertible with two gorgeous girls in it, trying to start his car. The guy is honking his horn like his stocks depended on it, and after a while, my dad has had enough. My dad left his car, went back and told the guy that he'd happily sit there and continue the honking for him, and that the D-bag could start Dad's car instead. Apparently that's all the girls needed to break out laughing, and Mr. Convertible was too flabbergasted to respond. Dad still brings out his smug face whenever he's had enough cognac to tell this story. I was standing in line at a Subway in college. Girl making the sandwiches was slow as heck because she was busy talking to everyone. She was bragging about how to work at Subway. You're not just a worker, but a sandwich artist. They have to demonstrate how they can make a sandwich for someone in 30 seconds or something like that. So from the back of the line, someone yells, "Well then frickin' do it!" She was embarrassed. I heard some guy outside of a hotel rip a giant toot in front of a lot of people. He turned to his buddy and loudly exclaimed, "Not bad for a quarter-inch speaker." I fell out. In grade school, we were at lunch and the sun was blaring through some windows into my friend's face. He got up to fix the blinds so he could see. The principal saw him and walked up and asked him what he was doing. He said, "I thought I'd just adjust the blinds so I could see better." The principal goes on to yell at him and tell him not to fix the blinds as they're very expensive, then proceeds to say, "Next time, don't think." And I, being a complete smartass, replied, "Yeah, Andy, how dare you think at school? My parents got to meet the principal that afternoon." In an elevator with a bunch of people going down to leave the building. This guy has a really nice pipe in his mouth, but it's not yet lit. This lady says in a really nasty voice, "There's no smoking in this building." And he says, "Lady, I have a butt, but I'm not farting." I have money riding on that guy having that zinger pre-prepared and deliberately baiting people with his pipe anytime he was on his way out of the building. Exhibitionism is the only reason anyone would choose to smoke one of those things in the modern day and age anyway. Guy on a park bench yelled, "Run, Forrest, run!" The jogger yelled straight back, "Sit, fatso, sit!" I've told this story before. I asked a very tall guy, he was 6'11", if he played basketball. He asked me if I played miniature golf. My cousin is 6'7", and I've told him he should get a t-shirt that says, "6'7", the weather's fine, and I don't play basketball." My dad asked, "Son, have you seen my phone?" I asked what it looked like. "It looks like two horses making babies." "It's a phone, son. It looks like a phone." My female teacher just randomly came up to me once and said, "You look ugly with that beard." I just said, "You too." Walking by my dad's bedroom, I hear my stepmom utter the dreaded, "Do these jeans make my butt look big?" It's a real catch-22. On the one hand, he likes big butts and he cannot lie. On the other, he knows what answer she wants to hear. It was in this moment of indecision that I felt it necessary to save my father. Louder than it should have ever been said, I rang out with, "The jeans are fine. It's all the cookies and ice cream that make your butt look so big." The look of horror, laughter, and pride on my dad's face made the subsequent obligatory grounding worth every boring minute. "If I want any lip from you, I'll rattle my zipper." I knew a gay guy who got relentlessly bullied at his Christian school growing up. Two guys were the main instigators and would nitpick anything he did. If he looked nice, they'd call him Rich Boy. If he dressed down, they'd ask him where his fancy clothes were. They'd ask him how many guys he slept with to afford his car. They were predictably trailer trash and homophobic and hated seeing a gay guy who had more than they did, even though he never flaunted his family's success to them. One day he got sick of that crap and said, "You know, sometimes I think about coming over and burning your house down, but then I remember aluminum isn't flammable." They were speechless. Sidewalk Cafe in San Francisco. A fast-walking, drunk, blazed, wild-eyed guy grabs a glass of wine from a guy who was seated at one of the tables and then continued onwards. The guy whose wine glass was stolen spun around in his chair and shouted, "I spit on your soul!" The wild-eyed guy turns around to walk backward a few steps, saying, "Where my soul's at, spit evaporates before it hits." Ray Meagher, famous Australian actor, was seen by myself and some friends in a McDonald's about 10 years ago. My friend shouted, "Hey Ray, getting a bit round around the edges these days, I see." Ray answered, "Yeah, 'cause every time I root your mum, she gives me a cookie." I read maybe 4 or 5 years ago about a group of friends that were all pregnant at the same time. Someone made the comment of, there must be something in the air, and someone else replied, yeah, their legs. I've been holding on to it all this time hoping to use it, but no one has ever set it up for me. Winston, if you were my husband, I'd put poison in your tea.
Madam, if you were my wife, I would drink it,
said Winston Churchill to Lady Esther. A few years ago, I was out with a friend and we were enjoying ourselves except for this one drunk guy who just wouldn't leave us alone. Interrupting conversations, being too touchy, just being obnoxious, and it was just so obvious we weren't interested. But he was not taking the hint. We thought he was finally gone, and my friend went to light up her cigarette and he appeared out of nowhere like a goddamn magician, held up a lighter to her face in an effort to light a cigarette that wasn't there yet, and he says, Bond, James Bond. Cool as an Arctic cucumber, my friend just lit her cigarette, took a drag and said, off. Frick off. To this day, I've never seen anything cooler. Back in junior high, my friends and I had an IRC chat room. This was the exchange one day. My female friend said, F the world. And my male friend said, well, I heard you're halfway there. I got a good chuckle over it. Overheard at a bar, I wouldn't sleep with you if you were the last man on earth. Which, if I was the last man on earth, you wouldn't be allowed in the line. Someone said to a guy in a wheelchair in a very sympathetic voice, do you need a hand? And the guy in the wheelchair said, no, but I could use a pair of working legs. A gay friend of mine tooted, and my smart aleck friend, who was friends with both of us, said, smells like burnt latex. I couldn't help but laugh hysterically. You have a nice day at school, Thomas. Don't tell me what to do, Mom. A friend of mine said the old, yeah, and if my aunt had a sausage, she'd be my uncle. Without missing a beat, another friend said, if your aunt had one of those, I'd suck that witch dry. He has a pretty hot aunt, to be fair. At a Phillies game during the 7th inning stretch, got a dog and a brew, so I was at the condiment table getting some mustard. Standing next to me is a guy with a pulled pork sandwich. Enter a drunk dude who said, man, that sloppy Joe looks so good. Guy number 1 just says, it's pulled pork, you uncultured frock. He said it so nonchalantly and just walked away. For some reason, a burn with swear words in it does seem a lot more vicious when it's delivered with an air of carelessness rather than anger, doesn't it? Remember that for next time, viewers. Had a student knock over a broom in another teacher's class. He looked at her and said, Mrs. A, can't you park in the faculty lot like the other teachers? It earned him an ISS and a slow clap from me. This little piece of gold was delivered by my brother, who was about 17 years old at the time, to my dad. Bright and early in the morning as we sat down for breakfast, he asked, why don't you brush your hair, Dad? Dad answered with a smirk on his face, my hair is as rebellious as my character, and as scarce as your patience. We all stared at my brother for about 10 seconds before bursting into laughter. And I'm sorry if it sounds weird, but it was originally delivered in Spanish. My buddy was working the oil fields with his dad, and at some point his dad started talking a lot about what a great guy their boss was, exaggerating mostly, so my buddy pulled chapstick out of his pocket and handed it to his pa, who asked, what's this for? My buddy answered, you're gonna need it after all that butt you just kissed. Jogger number 1 said, how does it feel to lose to a 300-pound guy? Jogger number 2 answered, how does it feel to be 300 pounds? I was out with friends one night. One of the guys was a man skank who was complaining about crying himself to sleep because he couldn't or wouldn't have a steady girlfriend. My significant other comes out of nowhere with, wiping someone else's sweat off your face doesn't constitute crying yourself to sleep. I wouldn't do the deed with you if you were the last guy on earth. That means I'd be the only one your transmissible diseases didn't kill. There's no I in team. Maybe not, but there's a U in the C word. I wasn't actually around because it happened in ancient history, but it has to be this one. When King Philip of Macedon wrote the Spartans a letter stating this, you're advised to submit without further delay, for if I bring my army onto your land, I'll destroy your farms, slay your people, and raze your city. The Spartans only reply, if. Ultimate badassery. My wife asked, what if we have a daughter and I die and she asks you questions about her period and woman stuff? What are you going to tell her? I answered, go ask your new mom. My uncle is one of the biggest know-it-all smartasses I know. When my dad got his new glasses, my uncle told him, they're nice, but they make you look kind of like a smartass. I replied, what, don't you like the competition? It was hilarious to see him trying to hide how angry that made him. Managers. What's your best? Oh, Well, I have to fire you now. Story. We had a sales incentive that my team hit their target for, so we all went out to an island resort for a day to hang out, play volleyball, and ride quad bikes. At lunchtime, we put on a modest bar tab for our 50-odd team, around 2 beers each. People started buying their own beers and having a good time without going too far over the top. One of the top sales guns, who we'll call Marky, is mingling with the team. 5 meters away from his boss, with hundreds of meters of beautiful deserted beaches in both directions, Marky pulls out the biggest roll of wacky tobacco I've seen in my life and has at it like it was the last one on Earth. Really, his gusto was impressive. I gave him the, "Really? You're going to do that right now?" eyes, and so it was that I had to fire the guy. The kicker is that he had booked a room in the resort on the island for the night, and I was 5 minutes away from catching the ferry home. If he had waited 10 minutes to let her rip, it wouldn't have been on work time and he'd still have a job. When my employee said smoke break, I just assumed cigarette, not crystal. Okay, I'll admit I didn't actually fire this guy because I didn't get the chance. He starts work at 10 a.m. in the supermarket that I manage. At 10:04, I ask him to bring a case of Coke from the storeroom and put it on the shelf. At 10:06, he comes back from the store without the Coke and said, "I didn't know this would involve manual labor," and promptly left. 6 minutes of total employment time has to be some kind of record. I used to run a sports bar a few nights a week. One night when I was off and the owner was supposed to be there running things, I got a call from one of the bartenders telling me that I needed to come in. When I got there, the owner was sitting in a booth in the back corner, passed out, completely drunk. One of the bartenders was also so drunk that he was staggering around breaking things. The kitchen staff had walked out, and one of the waitresses had burned herself trying to cook something, and the doorman was apologizing to an irate group of sports fans. Apparently, the owner and the drunk bartender had started pounding shots, the owner got drunk and screamed at everybody, and the cook and dishwasher had walked out with food still on the grill. I sent the drunk bartender home, sent the waitress to the ER, cooked up a bunch of the food that was prepped and sent it out comped, closed the kitchen, comped around on the house, and we ended up having a fun night. Didn't make any money for the owner, but it was fun. After we closed, I took the owner home, and by then he was sober enough to be remorseful. He decided on the spot to hire me as a full-time manager and asked me to hire an assistant, and pretty much stayed out of the place from then on. In effect, I fired the owner. You know, for all that guy seemed like he was disastrous on site, I do have to credit him for actually owning up to his shortcomings and addressing the problem in an effective way. That would be a first for bosses who pull that kind of crap in the restaurant. I was a manager in a bank. We had a mandatory 3-day training before the person could start working in the branch. I got a call in the middle of the first day of training for my new hire. The trainer was asking where she was. I called her cell and she said, "Well, it snowed a lot last night, so I assumed the training would be cancelled. I'll just show up tomorrow." I told her that we'd need to have her start the following week because all 3 days needed to be completed in order. She told me that she wouldn't work because she had a 5-day Vegas vacation set next week. She'd never told me that when we told her the start date. I should have fired her right there, but we didn't have many good applicants, so I gave her one more chance. I told her that no matter what, be at training next week. So next week, I got a call from the trainer asking where she was again. I called her and she said, "My flight back from Vegas got delayed and I only had like 3 hours of sleep. I didn't want to show up tired and make a bad impression. So, I fired her." I used to work retail, and every holiday season we'd bring on a bunch of new sales staff to keep up with the crowds. This particular new hire, let's call him Bob, aced the interview. He was well-dressed, well-informed, affable, and to be honest, when you're hiring seasonal staff, you're not looking for the best of the best, just warm bodies to fill a space. So, Bob was the dream. Bob shows up for his first day at 9 a.m., a full hour before the store opens. Pre-open generally involves a bit of tidying, making change for the registers, a few things like that. As the only manager in the store, I was in charge of the registers. While I'm busy flipping 50s for 20s and 10s, Bob was a few feet away folding shirts. So I drop a roll of pennies and then bend over to pick them up. When I stand back up, Bob's on the other side of the counter stuffing the stack of 50s that I just pulled from the registers into his pocket. He didn't even try to make an excuse, just gave me a whoops look and silently put the stack back on the counter. Within 5 minutes, he'd signed his termination papers and was out the door. Total employment time, 10 minutes. I was supervising a call center where the agents did market research surveys. One of the new guys from the recent training class had been working for a few days and had yet to even get decently into a survey with anyone. Like he'd sit there for 4 hours at a time doing nothing but occasionally throwing out an intro. But since he was a quiet kid and didn't complain, I spent more time with the others in his training group and didn't focus on his lack of production until about his 3rd day. I just wanted to hear how he was pitching the survey to give him some pointers. So I tapped in. They can't tell that we're listening into their calls, and I was on the other side of the room. On his first call, there was an answering machine. On the second call, an old man answers. "Hello?" And the trainee says, "I know where you live, sissy! Sucker!" and hangs up. It took me a minute to compose myself, but I asked him to come into my office and told him, "Yeah, you can't work here anymore." I had this girl working for me as a lab technician. She was this little Chinese lady, 7 months pregnant, really nice. One day she came into my office crying. Her purse had been stolen from her locker. The lock had been cut. Her purse had contained her cell phone, car keys, green card, money, everything. Apparently it's very expensive to replace a lost green card. She said it was more than $400. Also, since her car keys were now gone, she had no way to drive home. She lived 50 miles away. Keep in mind, 7 months pregnant. So her husband had to leave his job to bring her spare keys so she could drive her car home. Meanwhile, I reviewed the security tapes with HR, and lo and behold, we caught a girl on camera with a frickin' pair of bolt cutters going into the locker room. The girl we saw on the tape was one of the other lab technicians. My employee and someone the victim worked with every single day. We used the company bolt cutters to get into her locker, and we found the bolt cutters she had used. We also found food and a bunch of other crap she wasn't allowed to have in her locker. At that point, we didn't need to prove the theft to fire her, but we were going to try anyway. The next day, she comes in to get her check and we bring her into HR and show her the bolt cutters. She admits that she took the purse, the money, and the credit cards and threw the rest in the trash. We tell her that she's fired and to please wait here while we write her another check, so she wouldn't have to come back in next week to pick up her last one. While she was waiting, we called the cops who came in and arrested her. She took the cop back to her apartment where she gave them the purse which she hadn't thrown in the trash after all. She ended up getting deported to Mexico. The boss's son decided he wanted to be a graphic designer. But he had this problem, he always had other things to do on deadline day. Once a week we put out the paper, and it usually involves 10 to 12 grueling hours of work. He always had some lengthy errand to run, and because his father was never around, he kept doing this, leaving me to do all the work. Finally, his dad tells him he has to stay at work and can only leave if I give him permission. The very next deadline, he asks to leave for the afternoon. "Call your dad," I told him. "I'm not asking Dad, I'm asking you," he says. Oh, then the answer is no. He got highly angry and finally yelled at me, "Your attitude sucks." 2 days later, he waltzed in, sat down, put his feet up on his desk and hands behind his head and says, "We need to talk about your attitude." Somehow, I refrained from killing him, but I told him I'd never speak to him again. His father backed me up and he was done. Last I heard, the entitled little bag of crap manages a Radio Shack. Perfect fit. Well, the narrator thought he should mention that this comment was written circa 2011. As funny as the idea of this dropkick son managing a defunct electronics store in 2020 was, he had at least a year or so before that one got closed down, most likely. Had to fire a guy who was caught whacking the mule at his desk. Worked in an open-plan office. Got caught out by an admin lady sitting opposite him. Looking into his internet history, he was reading a very racy bit of text about a group who liked to keep their bedroom activities in the family. Used to manage a pizza joint years ago, and another manager hired this juggalo. My first time working a shift with the guy, he was practically sleeping at his counter. I told him he needed to get to work, and the guy blew up. Walked around the store, stomping his feet, taking his shirt off, wanting to fight me in front of customers. I'm an ex-bouncer, and I don't take any crap from guys like that. I called his bluff. He ended up leaving, accidentally hitting another delivery driver's car as he sped out the parking lot. Do I really need to tell you he was fired? I hired and fired an employee on the spot. He went out for his substance testing in the morning, passed it, and came back ready to work. I handed him his safety glasses as we proceeded to the shop, and he said, "I didn't sign up for this," and proceeded to tell me what a piece of crap the company was for making him wear safety glasses. I fired him then and there, and he pleaded to rehire him if I wouldn't make him wear safety glasses. How does that work? He had no leverage. I was working in a manufacturing facility and had just brought in some temporary labor. This particular temp was someone I'd only worked with a couple of times before, but he seemed like a switched-on guy. Math student doing graduate work if I remember correctly. Anyway, I bring the guy in, go over the related safety talk with him, and walked him to where we'll be working in the welding area of our plant. our parts weren't there yet, so I asked him to stay and wait for a few minutes while I went to get them. 5 minutes went by and my phone rang. It's a superior in the plant telling me I have to see something, to meet them at their office, and that we'll be walking back to where I'd left this temp. We get there, and he's managed to stack some empty totes in a nice lounge chair for himself. He's removed his safety glasses, is holding his cell phone in one hand, texting. Cell phones are banned on the floor, as I just finished explaining to him. He has his other hand picking between his toes. Yep, he'd taken off all of his safety equipment, including his safety socks, in the middle of a welding shop and was picking his toes. He even tried to start walking like that when we approached him. Needless to say, I ushered him out of the building and never worked with him again. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I let myself get pressured by my boss into hiring a copywriter, essentially because she had an enormous chest. She did a couple of writing tests that came back okay, and her attributed work on other sites and magazines was passable, so I didn't fight it too much. First day on the job, she announced that she's both dyslexic and suffers from adult attention deficit disorder and will need all sorts of special equipment to work with and longer deadlines to complete her work. Not really what you're looking for in a wordsmith. When I pointed that out, she rattled off a list of other companies that she was in the process of suing for unfair dismissal. Happily for me, she also began stalking someone else at work, ultimately sending him hundreds of very detailed, inappropriate messages, so we were able to get rid of her that way. I caught an employee running an adult site from his desk. Not just surfing prawn, mind you, running and maintaining said prawn site from his desk. A woman at my office was hired on as a software programmer. That was until our HR manager caught her hiding in the woman's bathroom with a very large how-to-do programming textbook. Turns out she had no frickin' clue what she was doing. Guy was working there 2 days. He was probably about 45. Went up to a long-time female employee, slapped a $50 bill on the table, and told her it could be hers if she just went along with him. When I confronted him, he admitted that he did it and didn't think it would matter because she seemed like she was probably the office working girl. I didn't even have to talk to HR about that one. It wasn't a firing, but an employee at my company was laid off. While we were cleaning out his office, we found the entire back wall of his work area caked with boogers. Damn it, man, what the hell is this? His explanation was, "Oh, the trash can's right there, and when I flick them in the trash, sometimes I miss." This is from the same fellow who crapped his pants while walking to work one day and called me on his cell phone asking me to pick him up and drive him home. And yes, I was his boss. Well, while I'm sure it was flattering that you were the one he trusted to help him in that messy situation, if I make brown, I don't think I'm going to tell another living soul, let alone the man I'm late on my way to work for. An employee, let's call him Bob, was out for a week allegedly with an infection of some sort. Bob was a young guy in his early 20s, and his mother called several times while he was out to keep me in the loop. One day, Bob unexpectedly returned to work about 3 hours past the start of his normal shift. He tells me he's feeling better and wants to go back to work. He looks awful, and I try to convince him to go home, but he insists on working, so I walk with him back to his cubicle and ask him if he needs anything. He asks for a glass of orange juice, and I happily run to the break room to get it for him. A half hour passes, and another employee enters my office looking a bit concerned. He suggests I go check on Bob, saying he doesn't look well. Upon entering the area where Bob sits, I find him slumped over his desk, head down and eyes closed. I wake him up and tell him he needs to go home. He agrees, takes a long sip of his orange juice, and tells me he just feels awful that he's been out of work for so long. I realize that letting him take the train home alone wouldn't be safe, so I grab a nearby phone and call him a town car. I watch as Bob tries to stand up and collect his stuff. He can barely hold himself up, so I offer to help him down to the car. With Bob leaning on my shoulder, we began to leave when I realized his backpack was still sitting under his desk. I suggest he hold onto the cubicle wall while I grab the backpack, and about 2 seconds after I walk away, he stumbles, falls, and slams his head hard on the corner of the cubicle. In a frantic moment, I grab his backpack and rush back to help him up. As I'm investigating the massive red mark on Bob's forehead, which soon turned into a very impressive swollen mess, an empty bottle of vodka falls out of his backpack. Bob isn't sick. Bob is wasted, and I'd given him the mixer for his screwdriver. Trying to stay calm and get Bob out of the building without the whole office knowing he's drunk, I helped Bob down the hall to the elevator and we rode together to the lobby. His car was waiting for him at the curb, and I ask a security guard to help me get him to the car since I can barely hold him up myself. Bob takes the seat behind the driver and immediately starts pulling on the driver's seatbelt and spitting on the seat next to him. The driver quickly gets out and tells me he won't be taking Bob anywhere. I open Bob's door and try to help him out of the car, just to be greeted with, "Don't frickin' touch me, you gay slur. I'll kill you if you touch me." I walk away, unsure what to do next, and watch as Bob falls out of the car door and sprawls out on the sidewalk as a high-level executive from my company walks by and says, "Come to my office as soon as you're done here." Lovely. I hail a cab, but the driver takes one look at Bob and peels away. I can't really blame him. I see a police officer across the street and I run over, asking for advice. The officer suggests I call 911, so I do so. The cavalry arrives, ambulance, police cars, fire truck included. Bob is angry, screaming at the cops and EMTs while they strap him to a gurney and secure him in the back of the ambulance. They tell me what hospital he's going to and take him away. I head back inside to call Bob's mother and let her know what happened. She's not surprised at all and admits that she was fully aware of his alcohol problem. I walk up to the high-level exec's office and he immediately just starts laughing his butt off as I enter. He just wanted to gossip. Obviously, Bob was fired. My boss actually had me send a courier with a termination letter to his hospital room, which I felt awful about. I only heard from Bob once after that day. He was in rehab and doing better, and he had called to ask if he could use me as a reference. I was working as a duty manager at an arcade to which I'd been transferred to help get it into shape, with the new manager that they'd sent there. I'd started at another site as an attendant and got made supervisor within a few months. This new place previously had one supervisor who didn't give a crap and 8 lazy attendants and one really over-the-top, hard-working lass. A lot of the machines were down on cash and I was told by my boss to find out who was stealing and simply get rid of them. So one by one I started fixing the machines so the meters read correctly and so that only I or my boss could get into them. The machines start to register what they're taking and everything seems to be going well. I walk into the office in the back of the arcade to hear guys complaining in the tea room about how hard it is to steal from the machines now. One or two of them make suggestions on how to get round the new locks and the working meters, and another one makes jokes about giving the new boss a kicking, which actually progresses into a conversation about how they'd do so. It went on for about 10 minutes with me making a fair few mental notes. As they obviously weren't going to do their jobs and were just mooching, I decided to ask them about it. So I went into the office, took a seat and called them in. The 4 of them enter with a look of uncertainty and ask what the problem is. I then tell them off the bat they're facing disciplinary action for stealing from the company, for intentionally damaging company property, taking unscheduled breaks, and for one guy falling asleep at the cash desk. This guy I felt sorry for prior to, as for the first job I'd ever had 8 years ago I had worked alongside him. These guys initially denied it, but when I stated various methods and repeated parts of their conversation, they buckled. Passed it on to my boss who raged the F out and fired them. So, 4 people in one sitting. Well, look, I know service jobs suck, but if you ever find yourself having a conversation along the lines of, "We need to figure out new ways to steal from the tills and then implement X steps while we beat the crap out of our new boss, who actually seems to give a crap about making it work again," maybe you should examine whether you really get to be upset when you're fired. I once worked as a general manager of a construction company. I had a tile installer that worked for me for a couple of years. Near the end, he had developed a bad drinking and substance problem. He once asked for extra money from a client because he said that I didn't pay him. That wasn't true. The client told me, so I told the troublesome employee I was going to have to remove him from the job site. He stole $400 in cash and possibly a watch, they weren't sure, from one of the client's purses before he left, so I had to cut a check to her and apologize. We were nearly done there, so she let us finish the last few trimmings and shower door installation. It had been a big 3-month-long remodel, and there hadn't been a hint of an issue with any of the other roughly 20 guys I'd sent to her house. She wrote it off as one of those things and accepted my apologies. The worst part is he was building a custom shower which he didn't waterproof, we later found out. The customer could have fallen through the 2nd story as the boards rotted. Luckily, she called us because a tile was coming loose. I came out and just about had a heart attack when I saw nothing but tar paper under the tile. Under all the tiles. I began pulling them off with ease, one by one, and I was so mad that I tried to set up a meeting with the guy. His phone was disconnected. We had to redo an $18,000 Moroccan-style showroom at our own cost. If I could find that guy to this day, 5 years later, I would beat him senseless. Oh, mine was a fun one. Older guy, hired him for a customer service position in a call center via a temp agency. Well, after 2 weeks, he calls me to tell me he's had a heart attack and is going to be out for a while. Seeing as how he works for a temp agency and not directly for us, my response was, okay, just let the agency know and let me know when you can come back. The guy would call me about once a week just to let me know he was alive. After about 6 weeks, I happened to be looking at a report of payouts from the temp agency, and I see this guy's name on there claiming 40 hours. After some digging, we figured out that he had been forging my signature on them since the day he had his, quote, heart attack. I ended up waiting at the temp agency for him to come pick up his check, and by check I mean 2 cops with handcuffs. When did a blind date make you run for the hills? I chatted up a girl online for about a week or so, and things went pretty well, so we decided to meet up. I asked her out to dinner and said that if things went all right, we could go grab a drink after. Let's just say her photo didn't match her appearance. Her excuse was that she'd had a crazy ex that was stalking her, so she'd used her sister's photo and name. Her name. She'd lied about her name. Anyway, came to find through our interview that she was an only child. She didn't catch her slip-up, but I sure did. She rambled on and on about crap I really couldn't have cared less about. Then came the food. The waitress may as well have brought it out in a trough, as this woman didn't use her utensils. Did I mention we were at a steak restaurant? That's right, folks. She picked her steak up and ate it with her hands. Let's not even get into the potatoes. It was the worst date of my life. Here was this large, disgusting, uninteresting thing with no table manners devouring her food in front of me. I couldn't eat my meal. I told her I wasn't feeling well and that I was just going to get my food in a box to go and that I'd eat it later if I felt better. Her response, "Would you mind if I ate it?" You wouldn't think this person had eaten in a week, as she proceeded to devour my dinner as well. She ate both steaks, both sets of mashed potatoes, all the bread, everything. The waitress comes over and says, "Goodness, when's your due date?" The girl says that she's due in 2 months. What the frick? First off, I'd been stunned that the waitress had asked, but then I was floored at the girl's response. Unbelievable. Being the gentleman that I am, I picked up the check because, hey, it wasn't going to pay itself and I'd much rather fit the bill for dinner than go to jail. I kindly said it was nice to meet you, got in my car and went to the bar. She followed me. She followed me to the bar. And when I got out of my car, she proceeded to berate me over why I was going out instead of going home. Now she's calling me a liar in the parking lot of the bar I frequent, and my work buddies are starting to roll in. I never heard the end of that. I said, to hell with this crap, got in my car and drove home. As I read this, a thought occurred to me. What if she was completely underwhelmed with you and decided, screw it, I'll eat with my hands tonight, just to see what she could get away with? I'm sure that's not the case, but I couldn't shake the thought. I got set up with the daughter of one of my parents' friends. I wasn't really looking forward to it, but I was on break from college and she apparently went to school not far from me. So it wasn't like a lost cause summer romance type thing. They showed me pictures and said nice things about her. I picked her up from her parents' place. We were both home for the summer. And I was a little surprised by how pretty she was. The pictures had been from back when she was in high school and didn't really do her justice. The date was dinner and a movie. Dinner went really well. We had a lot in common. She was very grounded and down to earth, cared about the environment. If I had a type, she was it. So we're walking to the movie theater, and I slipped my arm around her waist. She pushed me away and got really serious. "I'm really sorry because you seem like a nice guy, but, I'm gay. I just went out with you to make my parents happy." Sitting through the Chronicles of Narnia with her was the most awkward 2 hours of my life. Well, it was ironic that you both went to see a movie about going into a wardrobe, also known as a closet. I'd hazard a guess that it was probably an equally awkward date for her, and I hope to God that you didn't out her to anyone, because she seems like a nice lady. Mine's more of a blind date fail. I'd just come back home from college and I was having a night drinking at the local watering hole, when I noticed the place had a new bartender. New attractive bartender. Short hair, nice tattoos that were clearly leading to interesting places, and an Electric Six shirt. Frick, yes. So I start making a bit of conversation, and much to my surprise, we seem to really hit it off. And not just bartender as everyone's best friend until they leave hitting it off, but really cool conversation. She starts hinting at if I'm seeing anyone, and I say no, and she immediately reaches into her pocket and starts writing something down. On the top is the number of the apartment, and these are directions. We're having a party on Wednesday night, and you should come. True enough, a phone number and directions. What would you think? So Wednesday comes and I'm dressed up and ready to impress. I head over to her place, knock on the door, and there she is, looking $1,000,000. She smiles and hugs me, grabs me by the hand, and drags me through the party until she gets to this big dude. "Jonas, this is my roommate Jeff. Jeff, this is Jonas." I do the whole pleasantry thing, but when I turn around, she's gone. I mean like poof, gone. Like Batman. Not knowing anyone else, I just keep on talking to Jeff. Seems like a good guy. Suddenly, he stops me mid-sentence and says, "You're not gay, are you?" "No? You should really tell Liz that." She'd apparently set up the entire party as an excuse to hook me up with her roommate. I'd been on a blind date with a guy and didn't even know. I once went on a date with a girl and this is how the conversation went. She asked, "So, what's your favorite book?" Tough, but when I was little I loved Jurassic Park.
"Oh, Jurassic Park?"
"The book or the movie? Everyone loves Jurassic Park." Then she follows up with,
"I don't believe in dinosaurs."
"You don't believe in fossils?"
"I don't want to get into it, but I think fossils are bullcrap."
I ended that conversation there and held on to the night until later when she told me, "I don't believe in outer space," and my head fricking exploded. I wasn't feeling great but decided to meet anyway. We met at a Belgian beer bar. She was gorgeous, fun, and totally into me. I felt a gas pain, so I leaned forward slightly to quietly relieve the pressure. I completely and explosively crapped my pants. The odor was immediate. I excused myself to the bathroom, but the damage was done. I walked out of the bathroom, muddy-panted, out of the bar, and boarded the train for home. The date, however, was nothing compared to the horror of the following 3 weeks recovering from E. coli. I was set up by a friend when I was 16. He took me to the movies at the mall and awkwardly tried to make out. Then we sat in the food court and he asked my honest opinion of him, which I mumbled something typical like, "Oh, you seem nice." And without invitation, he then delved into what he thought of me, which was attractive, but that I could be really hot if I lost 5 to 10 pounds. Then he left me for a bit, which was weird, and returned with a lovely gift. A creepy puppet. I've only been on one blind date a few years ago. It was with the investment banker's son of one of my mother's friends. One of her attempts at finding me a respectable boy from a good family. So that night he calls to ask if I could pick him up instead since his car is broken down. I thought, no problem, and asked where he lived. The guy was staying at a buddy's place an hour from my house. Eek. But still, no problem, I thought. So I got dressed in my cutest little black dress and heels to channel the grace of Audrey Hepburn, and gosh darn it, I think I did pretty well. I pick up the guy and he's not all that bad either. A little on the short side, but he has a cute face and seems fit. So we get to the restaurant and order. He gets a few drinks into him and we have a conversation about jobs and stuff, but then it arrived at who we admired. His answer? Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. Just, without the killing and stuff. He said he admired the character and aspired to live that kind of life, without the killing, of course. Ding ding ding, the alarm bells were going off in my head already. So trying to change the subject, I asked about the frat that he was in. We both went to the same university, and mentioned that I knew some of the guys. He then proceeded to tell me that, all of his friends were just vehicles for him to get ahead in life, and that he didn't really like any of them. Oh boy. Then came the check. He had forgotten his wallet. So I paid. Just awesome. By now, I was looking for this night to be done, but no, things had to get more fun. On the way back to the garage, we passed by an alley and he leans in and whispers into my ear, "You're frickin' hot, and I want to frick you behind that pile of garbage." And then he licks my ear. Do not want. I tell him the night's over, gave him some money and said that he could take public transport home. I then called my friends and went out to a bar to drink the experience away. Needless to say, I was jumpy for a few days, expecting an axe to come out from a corner at any moment. So that's our second story about people's parents hooking them up with other people's single kids that they know, which is so far out of whack in my world. And look at what happens in both of these stories. I'm sure there are more positive results to be honest, but this man by himself represents a serious cautionary tale about why not to go on this sort of date. Okay, I really can't resist typing up this story. 3 or 4 months ago, I was talking to a girl on OkCupid. Things were going pretty well and we decided to get together. I was on a budget because I was saving to move out of the country, so I suggested a local Thai place, which had a 25-cent beer with an entree, figuring the food was pretty decent and the cheap beer wouldn't hurt. I offered to pick her up, but she declined, which is completely respectable. The night of the date, I was running about 5 minutes late and feeling a little rushed when I get a call from her. Even though I gave her an exact address in an easy-to-find place in town, she's having trouble getting there. She ends up calling me back 6 or 7 times in the next 45 minutes as she tries to find her way. There was no advice I could give that was helping this girl. By this point, I've already been there for more than 30 minutes and I was about 3/4 of the way through my first beer. Red flags about how incompetent she must be are going up all over the place, but I'm already on the ride, right? The final time she calls me, she says, "Hey, is there a parking lot?" To which I reply, "No, it's all street parking, but there were a lot of open spots when I parked." She then replies, "I don't know how to parallel park." Mind you, this is a city, parallel parking is a way of life. I'm pretty dumbfounded that she doesn't possess this skill already. This is already a nightmare in my mind, and as I sit there pondering how to solve it, she asked if I would mind coming out there to park her car. I agree and start walking out, being a bit embarrassed at having to explain that I'll be right back to the hostess. I walk outside and a few minutes later she pulls up. First of all, this girl was not as advertised. I got MySpace angled hard. I'm not someone who needs the perfect girl, but I'm telling you, this was out of control. I climb into the driver's seat and the first thing I say is how weird it is. I haven't driven anything but a manual in 3 years, and her automatic feels very strange. I slowly accelerate and head down the block, about 3/4 of the way down, where I see an open spot. I let off the gas and instinctively go to push in the clutch. Instead, I stomp on the brake hard. This girl had quite a lot of mass and wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Any physics student knows what happened next. Her head flies forward and nails the dashboard. I start apologizing like crazy, and luckily she wasn't hurt. We spent the next hour having a really awkward dinner and then parted ways. No, we didn't call each other. In short, girl asked me to park her car, it's an automatic and I drive a manual. I hit brake instead of clutch, slamming her head into the dashboard. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Oh, my story's also from OkCupid. We'd talked a few times. The photos were small and blurry, but I got the basic idea, at least enough to set up a date since she lived about 10 blocks away. She was 24 at the time and I was 28. We meet at a bar and I can tell you that she had been more than a little deceptive with her pictures. I already kind of knew nothing was going to come of it, but had nothing else to do that night, so I figured I could have some drinks and hit the sack before midnight. Almost as soon as we meet, she suggested that we start taking shots of whiskey. This girl could drink. Over the course of a couple of hours, she'd probably had half a dozen shots and several mixed drinks. During the process, she liked to discuss how much she loved giving down-under kisses and how much she got around with the people she knew. I guess she had self-esteem issues, I don't know. I was plastered, like blind drunk by the time we were ready to leave. I don't remember going to my apartment, but I remember we ended up on my couch with a movie on as I faded in and out of consciousness and she raided my liquor cabinet. What happened next would have landed me in jail if the roles were reversed. First, I woke up to her on my lap. She's sitting facing away from me, grinding crotch against my jeans and stumbling about during the process. She's still in her dress and panties. Then things went black again. I wake up again and, well, things are happening. I might have been drunk, but I remember a good down-under kiss, and this chick was giving a great gagging performance, like only a drunk girl and adult film star can. Then things went black again. I woke up again, and now she has my pants around my knees. She'd removed her undies, and we're doing the deed without protection. I remember being totally freaked out by that, but not as freaked out as when she removed her brassiere and a dusting of dead skin fell out of the cups and onto my black shirt. I literally threw her off me as I stood up and ran to the bathroom with my pants around my ankles, hurling my guts out into the toilet. When I got back from the bathroom, I was slightly sobered up and she was sitting on the couch finishing herself off. She asked if we could finish together, and I said no, but she could finish me if she wanted to. I honestly don't remember if I arrived at the destination or not, because I passed out again. When I woke up the next morning, she was gone, and I never replied to another one of her text or OkCupid messages again. Good gravy. That's 2 thumbs down for OkCupid then. And the narrator says this honestly without any idea of whether that's a service anyone uses anymore. Not sure if it took off outside the US. Then again, the narrator used Plenty of Fish for years because for a while that was the only service that worked on his Windows phone, so I can't even joke about obsolete services. On to the next great disaster. I was set up with a friend of a roommate's girlfriend. Let's call the date Lisa, and let's call the roomie's girlfriend Karen. I knew what she looked like, so I knew there was an attraction, but I'd never even spoken with her. We met outside the restaurant and Lisa was on her cell phone. I figured it must have been important, but as we walked in and waited for the table, she kept talking about stupid crap, clearly on the phone with a BFF about nonsense. She gets off the phone, doesn't apologize, and we get seated. Then about 2 minutes later, her phone rings again and it's the same, "Oh my god, no way," crap conversations. The waitress comes over and we order drinks, while she's still on the phone and I twiddle my thumbs. The drinks come, Lisa's still on the phone, and I'm halfway done with my drink, and have waved the waitress off once already because Lisa is still on the phone. Finally, about 20 minutes in, I quietly stand up, take $20 out of my wallet, and walk out without saying a word. As I'm walking out, I see Lisa's eyes widen to the size of dinner plates, her mouth open wide and her face turning red in embarrassment. All of the surrounding tables had seen what transpired and were whispering to themselves about it as well. By the time I got home, my date Lisa was on the phone with Karen, who was over at our house at the time. It didn't occur to me until now that my date was probably on the phone with Karen the whole evening. Karen was angry. As soon as I walked through the door, she started attacking me with, "You are such a jerk. Why would you just leave her there and not say anything?" I looked her dead in the eyes and calmly replied, "I didn't want to interrupt such an important phone call," and then walked into my room and went to bed. As I was leaving the living room, I noticed the same expression on Karen's face that Lisa had when I left the restaurant. As a side note, fast forward about 6 months and Lisa and I wound up being F-buddies for a while, so I guess everyone won in the end. I met a couple through a mutual friend and we hung out a bit one night, having a decent time. I spent a couple of days afterwards texting back and forth with the wife of the couple thinking, hey, new friend. She eventually starts talking up this friend of hers, Gary, and it's clear she wants to set us up on a date. Okay, I think. I'm newly single again after 5 years of bad relationship. We'll see how this goes. She describes him as a football player build. Not being a sports person, it doesn't occur to me that I should have asked her to clarify. Would he be a quarterback or lineman, for instance? Anyhow, I meet Gary for coffee downtown. Suffice it to say, he's a substantial man. But I think, hey, I'm not perfect either. I'll give him a shot. We have an okay time over coffee, talking about regular random small talk topics. He walks me back to my place, but the night is still young and he suggests hanging out and watching some Futurama. So I invite him upstairs. As soon as we're sitting down, he starts talking about his ex and all the drama that she brought into his life, and it slowly comes to light that they may not actually be broken up. He's just seeing what else is out there. At this point, I'm more than over the date and I'm ready for him to get out of my apartment. So I go to the restroom and plan on feigning illness upon my return. Turns out he gave me an even better excuse to give him the heave-ho. I return from the bathroom, only to find him on my couch, cranking his equipment furiously. I freak out, ask him what he's doing, and he says, "What does it look like?" and makes a motion for me to come join him. I was kind of at a loss at this point, and I think all I did was say something about how he needs to leave. He removes his hand from inside of his pants. Did I mention he was wearing sweatpants? Ugh. He shrugs and exits. I never heard from him or the woman who introduced us again. I went on a blind date 2 years ago with a guy one of my good friends set me up with. He'd just started university at USC and was majoring in political science. I thought he sounded pretty smart from what my friend told me and agreed. We met at Laguna Beach, had dinner at the Greeters restaurant, which is this cute little place that doesn't have the best decor but has good food with large portions. It wasn't until he started mentioning that he was a die-hard Republican and didn't support gay marriage and terminations and IVF babies. I'm an IVF baby, and it's a sore subject because my mum tried so hard to have a baby with my dad, and it wasn't until she tried IVF that she had me. Stupidly, I asked him, what did he have against IVF babies? He immediately spews on and on that IVF babies are nothing more than objects of status to their parents and that it violates the rights of the child, depriving the child of their true relationship with their parents and can hinder the maturing of their personalities. By this point, I'm done with him and just nodded along to whatever he said. After he paid the check, he drove me home and walked me to the front door. I unlocked it and then turned around to say goodnight when he leaned in with his tongue already out. I didn't know what to do, so I tilted my head so that he had hit my cheek. Icky feeling of tongue licking my face. When I went inside, he looked at me shocked and asked if I was going to invite him in. When I told him no, he got mad and said that I paid for your fricking dinner. By then, I just wanted to drink a bottle of wine by myself, so I took $10 out of my wallet, threw it in his face, and closed the door. Worst blind date ever. Wow. Well, I bet that you were pretty okay with being single for at least a while after that one. Silver linings abound in this video. And regardless of the rest of his garbage personality, my dude, leaning in with the tongue already out is objectively horrifying even if your date was into you up until that point. Ugh. So I was going to school in New Jersey. The school that I was attending had about a 15-to-1 guy-to-girl ratio, so you can imagine how much fun those parties were. Getting pretty desperate for female attention, I turned my sights to a couple of online dating services. After a few weeks, I set my sights on one girl that I'd talked to a few times through the website. We decided to get together after quite a bit of flirting. I should mention that at this point I was aware from the beginning that she had 3 kids. Obviously, I took caution to this, but I figured that since I wasn't long for New Jersey, just to take this as a sign that she was active in the bedroom. I should also mention that the town I was living in New Jersey, was a heck hole that didn't house a single attractive or even moderately attractive woman within a 30-mile radius. So I drove about 30 minutes to this bar in her hometown the next Friday to meet her. I run into her almost immediately and assess the situation. She's got a cute face and a nice chest. She has a few extra pounds on her, but not to the point where I'd call her overweight. We have quite a few drinks while chilling, we play shuffleboard, talking to her ex-lesbian lover, that's another story maybe, and we decide to leave the bar a few hours later. she suggests going back to the apartment, which I assume is hers. More to come on that. Before we do though, she grabs a 12-pack of Michelob Ultra from the bar's cooler and tells me to walk. Like this is a normal thing in this hellhole that is Bloomington, New Jersey. We get to the apartment and start drinking the beer. Conversation dies down pretty quick, so I just throw it out there, being that I'm drunk. You wanna get busy? Not the classiest moment of my life, but it worked, so I'm not embarrassed about that. She takes me by the hand and we go to the bedroom. She takes off her pants, I take off mine, and we start going at it. A few minutes later, we hear the front door open. Immediately, she tells me to stop and pretend that I'm sleeping. I'm all, what the frick? The door to the room open and the lights turn on. All I can hear is, oh, what the frick? I peek over my shoulder and see a girl and a very large guy standing in the doorway looking shocked. The guy is freaking out and the girl is trying to calm him down, telling him it's okay. I'm dead. I know it. This is how my life is going to end. The only thing that saves me is when he takes the girl and throws her to the ground. This makes her more angry than I've ever seen another person get angry, and he immediately starts apologizing to her as they leave the room. I jump out of bed, throw my pants back on, and sprint out the door. I later find out that it was her sister's place and room, and that said sister was living with her boyfriend. A boyfriend who could have very well played linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys. Scariest moment of my life and worst blind date experience. Which job always hires the biggest morons? So I work in an adult film store. Some of my coworkers who've been there forever are real smart cookies, but a majority of applicants are dumb as frick. When I first walked in and asked for an application, I was handed a sheet of paper and told to read it before I could have an application. It said that you shouldn't apply if you're prone to oversleeping, frequently get flat tires, don't have steady childcare, and a bunch of other common sense things that apply to pretty much any job. My first thought was, what kind of first-class morons do they usually get applying? Probably the ones who want to watch smutty movies all day and don't think any work is involved. Warehousing. We have no educational requirements at all. We have people who are functionally illiterate and health and safety briefs have to be read out to them. In addition, we don't vet new staff members at all, really. Our training procedures are laid out in theory to make them 100% idiot-proof, 200% checks, remote and physical supervision, stuff like that. And yet, we still get people who've been employed for more than 3 years making week 1 mistakes as they forgot how to do a task they'd completed a few hundred times before that. One guy's ability to follow tasks was so bad, we physically had to print out his worksheets, with multiple copies for when he lost the first 2 or 3, and make him read the instructions back to us to make sure he got it. Honestly, I reckon if I was allowed, I'd sack about 10 to 15% of the workforce, and we'd either have no loss in production or even a marginal gain in stock accuracy. Guitar Center salesman. You need 5 of them and 2 managers to buy a kazoo. My business partner went to a Guitar Center. He was looking around and they had a Marshall amp without a price tag. He asks how much and they go, well, it's busted, mister. We were going to send it back. And he's like, seriously, I'm an engineer. I might be able to fix it. How much? And they were like, $99. That's what it would have cost us to freight it back. And he's like, okay. So 3 days later, he's trying to find every set of schematics, and I'm like, you bought this at Guitar Center because they couldn't get it to work. So let's just plug it in and reset the circuit breaker. It powered up just fine. We didn't even have to reset the breaker. The dumb SOBs sold him a $2,000 amp for $99. As best as we can tell, they never plugged it in, or the outlet they used was dead. Hey listen, I don't want to attack the profession of driving trucks, but the company Swift hires whatever dumb Fs can hold a steering wheel, and even sometimes dumb Fs that can't. I could not agree more. I work logistics for a small chemical company, and our mantra is, if a driver can F up, a driver will F up. Now, I've worked with some absolutely stellar carriers who really do care about making sure loads pick up and deliver on time, and will bust their butts for us because they care about the business. And we pay them well because we appreciate it. But holy crap, Swift, Roadrunner, Estes, and UPS can F right off. They screw up more things than they don't screw up. We should specify for this video that just because some of these people's encounters with certain professionals has indicated a below-average IQ, it doesn't mean that all people who do the job are dumb. As a peace offering to all the many trades we're going to insult in this video, the next story is an enormous generalization about the narrator's profession. Any job that requires actors. I run a small production company, so I need them frequently. And let me tell you, actors are the single dumbest people in the entire world. But the golden ticket is that they're not just dumb, they're also pretentious dumb. As in dumb but trying really hard to make their brand of dumb seem deep and insightful. I had one actor, while filming a commercial for a goddamn yogurt, ask me, "But would you like my character to look at the yogurt right now? I feel like they'd wait another couple of seconds before looking down. This character had no name. Literally, the only thing they did was look at the yogurt. The actor was trying to impress me with her try-hard approach. Spoiler, it doesn't work. One time, I was filming a PDF software commercial, and I told the actor that I'd be filming it in a high frame rate so that I could slow it down. He didn't really get it, so I just said, "It's a slow-motion shot. You don't need to worry about it. Just go at regular speed." I had to explain this repeatedly over 5 takes that the camera was making it slow motion and that he didn't have to. I had to explicitly tell him twice to not do it in slow motion. The guy made fricking slow motion effects noises in slow motion as he moved his hands across the keys, on more than one occasion. At one point, when I told him to do it in regular speed, he responded, "Yo, okay," then paused and then said, Oh, okay, before promptly going back to slow motion. If I hadn't been with him for like 4 hours, I would have sworn he was on the wacky tobacco. That guy was the worst. Like, honestly, his sandwich was missing some mustard, but almost all of them do this thing where you're giving them directions and they'll nod and say yes at the exact moments that they need to be taking in information. Okay, so when you pick up the cup, I need you to, yeah, okay, make sure that you're not looking into the gotcha. Most frustrating thing in the world. God, I hate actors. I worked with a guy named Dave at a moving company. In our lunchroom, we had a microwave, and on top of that was a phone. One day, Dave comes in, puts a burrito in the microwave on high for a minute, and goes back to the warehouse. He comes back 58 seconds later, the microwave beeps, he walks over, picks up the phone, hello, hangs up, frickin' idiots, and then left again, and never came back for the burrito. I love this story. I mean, I'd love it more if he put the red hot burrito to his ear. Darden restaurants. I'm not talking about the store-level people either, I'm talking about management. The number of things they managed to F up is truly mind-blowing. Yeah, I don't know the answer to this question, so my job apparently. You're kind of too self-aware to be the dumb one. Cooks in the Navy. When you enlist in the Navy, they test your aptitude and give you a list of jobs available to you based on your results. If you score in the bottom 5th percentile, you have one job available to you. Cook. Cooks in the Navy are some dumb mother effers. My Marine unit never had anyone pop for substance test except for the cooks. It's like every cook we had would eventually do a smack rock and go on the run after failing a urinalysis. Not really a profession, but people who work in sports shops. Anyone who's been to Sports Direct will know what I mean. It's because it's really easy to get a job at Sports Direct and they throw you out into the shop floor with no training. My source? I worked there for 4 years. I was on the shop floor within seconds of my first ever shift, helping customers with no knowledge of any stock or where any of it was. I didn't even know when my break was or where the staff room was, and I ended up being chased down the road by security on my way out because I wasn't told they'd check your bag on the way out. Have a lot of experience in retail, so it's not like I wasn't prepared for the job, but that whole company just sucks. Apparently construction. Apparently my dad's boss is getting frustrated because almost every job applicant has a substance problem, it seems. My dad is pretty lenient on the green herb. Everyone in the industry knows that substance testing is common, so if you're in the market to hop or looking for work, you should know not to get too high. That being said, oftentimes he'll ask young kids if they'd pass and they just stare blankly at him, and he tells them to come back in a month. Insurance requires a clean test, so even if he personally doesn't have a problem with it, he still needs a clean test to hire someone. What I will say is that harder substances are out of your system much quicker. So if someone can't stay off pain pills or smack or something long enough to pass a test, almost always they have a significant problem. For some reason, every single oil refinery has a couple of engineers and operators who don't really do anything. They've been there forever and they have very strong views that are almost hilarious, both liberal and conservative wackos. Usually job title like safety engineer or maintenance planner. From my experience, real estate. They can be great at their job, but I've met agents that make me wonder how they can function in the rest of their life. I work at a coffee shop and we get this realtor who comes in every Friday and gets his mocha with extra chocolate. He always stares when we make his drink. The weird part is when he gets back on his Segway where his little dog is wearing glasses and a mini helmet and is just waiting for him. That dog is so weird how it just sits at the top as if it's steering it and somehow controlling this guy's mind. Scholarship and financial aid offices. My college, the financial aid hours were always inconvenient. 10 to 4, off for lunch, 12 through 1. I'd always skip class to accommodate their hours. On top of that, their solution to every problem was to take out a loan. I don't need any more debt. You know, TSA agents aren't exactly Harvard grads. I don't know, most of them seem like regular folk who just want to get through the day. But I will say that there are a couple of really annoying ones that are that excruciating mix of being really dumb as well as tripping on their tiny amount of power. They really get a kick out of hanging you out to dry about the droplets of water left over in your drink bottle. Food service. I'm a waitress and bartender, and it's amazing the amount of stupid people they hire, and then they leave a few weeks later because they can't hack being busy. Or they call in a lot and still have their jobs, while the good employees get fed up at being understaffed and leave because the standards are so low and they go unrecognized for actually being good at their jobs. How are multi-level marketing and pyramid scheme people not at the top of this list? Dumb is unfair, but those who work as a sales rep for every industry I've been a part of were terrible with computers. I'm a sales rep for a pretty complex industry. We just hired a lady with 20 years of sales experience who literally doesn't know how to use her laptop. It's a frickin' nightmare. My first desktop support role, a lady called me because all of her desktop icons were gone, when the reality was her battery was dead and the laptop wouldn't even turn on. That was when I learned you can't trust people to explain a problem to you. There was a group I was in years ago with this guy named Mike in it. Mike was a very nice guy, not a mean bone in his body. Married with 3 kids, but unemployed, so his wife worked. He could never even get a job anywhere because he had no qualifications, and he just couldn't see patterns and stuff. Even in our group, he'd just sit there happily without saying anything for hours. We tried to ask him a few times if he'd like to chime in or what he was thinking, and he genuinely had nothing going on upstairs. Suddenly, he applied to the sheriff's department and got hired, and they loved him. He's been there for 3 years. That changed my view of the sheriff's department. There are positions for people like Mike. The sheriff's department needs people who can handle, just take this person's hand, take their fingerprints, and pass the paperwork along, for 8 hours a day without going crazy. FedEx, UPS, some factory worker positions, stuff like that. All of them are pivotal to society, but if you're the type to think too much, you don't want to do them for very long. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. TSA employees. I don't think half of them even have their GEDs or high school diplomas. Every time I go, I have to explain the concept of dual citizenship at least 4 times. I've heard people say that the TSA is a job program, and I'm not sure that I can disagree. They get paid decently too. I've seen openings at a local airport where they make like $14 an hour. Meanwhile, I'm here with the title computer technician making $9 an hour. I knew a guy in high school who had no experience. He'd just graduated high school and never worked a job. He applied to TSA and got in. Everyone was jealous because we thought being a TSA agent for your first job is great. It's better than McDonald's or Walmart. He quit after 2 years because he hated dealing with the people there. Shrimp boat captain. Mama says stupid is as stupid does. My buddy works as an electrician. He regularly works with plumbers and says that on a near hourly basis he hears phrases like "duh" and "plum plum," and my favorite is "I am Lord ya 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 ya," all of which are unprovoked and out of the blue. The food service industry hires some of the most incompetent people out there. It's a constant battle between a lack of common sense and an inability to perform the easiest task. Screw Buffalo Wild Wings. Well, Arizona State's teaching staff are about as qualified as my dog. The only difference is my dog does well around groups of college students. Oil sands, outside of trade and professional jobs. Some of the absolute biggest morons in the world who get paid astronomical amounts of money to basically lift heavy things and drive vehicles. And then when the economy crashes, they blame the evil gooberment because nobody wants to hire somebody with a substance habit, a 70 IQ, and a lifted truck with brass truck nuts on the hitch. They get paid that much because it's dangerous as F. I assume long, hard hours and away from home and family for months. You don't have to be smart, but you are risking life and limb. The government. My source? Working 31 years with them. Yep, I'm a skilled and motivated government worker, and I often feel like I'm replaying my last job on easy mode with all of the weapons and upgrades. You should see my superior's eyes light up when I complete a task on the same day that they ask me to do it. Coal mines, around here at least. They're the repository of people too dumb for oil and gas, and too unreliable for the forest industry. Also, it's because if you have any talent at all, you'd be moving away from the coal areas. Telemarketers. If you ask them specific questions about the product they're trying to sell and specifics about the warranty, they often have no idea how to respond accurately and professionally. I crap you not, the US military. Panera bread. The last time I went to Panera, they gave me a baguette that wouldn't break open. It was that hard. I showed it to the cashier and asked for another that wasn't stale, and she got a giant bread knife, sliced it in half with great difficulty, and said it was fine. Okay, thanks so much. They have never once spelled my name right. My name is Tim. Defense against the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts. The DMV. I guess they might just be the meanest people. Most mindless bureaucratic jobs tend to breed angry, unhappy people, especially those that deal with the general public. While you and I might be completely decent human beings, the general public is filled with miscreants that are best dealt with defensively so as to not expose the throat. Middle management at nearly every major company. These are people that typically have failed upwards. They are not decision makers and they weren't irreplaceable enough in their previous role. They have enough power to interfere with daily operations without the foresight to understand the impact of their power trip. As I think I've recommended before on the channel, watch the movie Office Space for an accurate documentary on middle management. You will never look at your boss the same way. I don't mean this because you'll either realize they have no idea what they're doing, or that they are in fact one of the 10% in the world who actually contribute. So who else is here looking at these trying to find a job that they can do? HR. Stop watching this, Toby. You are a waste of space and you should give up. The adult film industry. I've started a dozen over 10 years ago, and it doesn't matter if you were male or female or smart or stupid, they hired you if you had the right assets or body part length. Ever wonder why some plots in those films sounded so obviously scripted? Most people hardly knew how to even read. I'm going to argue that cashier, food service, except chefs, and janitor aren't professions in the spirit of the question, but Coast Guard. The janitors in our building are actually pretty average. Never met one that made me go, holy crap, this guy is full-blown stupid. Most of them don't like extra work though, and I get that. However, they are good at their jobs, and I remember their names just because they're way more fun to shoot the crap with than most of the other employees. Hell, if they'd pay me the same to work with them instead, I totally would. The oldest guy, who's the manager, so to speak, has put together some ingenious crap to fix things that would have taken weeks to have a contractor come in and fix. Best part is that he just dismantles his quick fix a day before the contractor comes in, and they've never said anything. Time Warner's customer service reps. I swear they are borderline mentally inhibited and illiterate to boot. This is just the US-based reps, not even the other ones. A lot of them have this monotone, flat effect that leads me to believe there's just not much going on upstairs. I had an awful experience getting cable transferred, and their stupid reps made it 10 times worse by not even understanding or acknowledging my problem. No, turning my box off and on again won't solve my frickin' problem when the text showed up 3 times and said I had no signal going to my unit. I had a rep schedule an appointment at a certain time and informed her I already took off work 3 times and I got nowhere and it would have to be a different time. She gave me a 5 p.m. appointment, but later when I called to confirm, the automated system said it was the time I specifically told her I couldn't do because I can't keep taking it off work. I can guarantee that call center employees aren't just dumb, they just really, really hate their jobs. My source? Former call center employee. Rural area public schools. They'll hire anyone who went within 20 feet of a college if they're really that desperate for a teacher. If by dumb you mean uneducated, any work at a mill. I'm sitting in my lunchroom as I type this, and I've never heard more crude or aimless conversations in my life. I'm only here for a summer job and I've already lost too many brain cells. I work at a steel mill. Usually only the temps are dumber than a pile of doo-doo and they don't last long. I mean, I did hear a conversation about painting their wangs black so that they'd look bigger, which was met with the argument of black clothes making people look thinner so it would make them look smaller and… I really don't know. I said something about contouring and then my boss shut the door after saying, "Shut up, Deborah. My name is not Deborah. No one there is named Deborah and the closest name to Deborah is Dave." Real estate agents. My opinion is that they make up the largest group of wealthy idiots. Huffington Post writers. USPS. My mailman gets out of his truck to put notes on our cars parked on the street if he doesn't have an entire car length in front of the mailbox, even though he doesn't need that much space. Best part is, he says on the notes that it's dangerous for him to get out of his truck to deliver the mail. What? Security. I've worked with 5 people who were either complete idiots, mentally ill, or outright stupid. To break the numbers down, 1. It was only the one mentally ill person with delusions of grandeur and an overinflated ego. I'm no psychiatrist, but having worked with him, it was very evident that he was a narcissist and had some kind of manic disorder. He had constant highs and lows. but he claimed to have slept with a number of women and the only 7-star hotel in the world, the Burj Al Arab Hotel, I think is the name. I didn't buy any of that for a second. He also used roids, used dating apps while at work, and slept on the job. I would have put money on him being in the closet gay, given the previous comment about women. And second, there were 4 idiots. 2 of the said 4 began inappropriate workplace relationships and screwed each other while at work. It doesn't take 10 minutes to use the bathroom. One of the remaining 2 decided to watch bootleg Disney shows on her phone and to leave truckers at the gate for more than 10 minutes. Time equals money for those guys. And the final one has the worst eating habits I've seen in my life. He slurps his drinks and doesn't bother wearing a belt. The other 2 are and were just incompetent. In short, security has idiots. Be forewarned. You know what? I don't think any profession attracts the dumbest people. I've worked in the medical field, and trust me, there are dumb doctors, dumb nurses, and dumb paramedics. Having a uni degree doesn't confer greatness. You can have some very book-smart professionals that are just not people-smart and have no street smarts. I'm sure this is true of other professions as well. I think this person generally speaks the true. I've known engineers who are morons. I will, however, admit that some professions have a greater concentration of the obvious ones. None. All working people deserve respect. At the end of the day, they're self-reliant and disciplined. There's no shame in that. What planet are you from? Are you a politician? I worked at an Ace Hardware for 8 miserable soul-sucking years. When I first started, there was a manager there. This manager claimed that when he was younger, he was the highest-ranking civilian in the United States military. What the frick? That makes no sense, I know. His story went like this. When he was 18-ish, he lived next to a military base in Georgia. Him and his genius friends got the bright idea to sneak onto said base. Shortly after, his friends turned back. Of course, he got caught, but they were shocked how far into the base he was able to infiltrate. From then on, they sent him all over the world as a covert agent to exploit the weak points in base security to fix them. Years later, he was working at Walmart, before it was huge, and some guys in suits came into the store. His name came up in some files and they came to find out what his involvement was. He told his story and they didn't believe him. He then took them to the office inside the store and hacked into the Pentagon's computer system to prove his identity. Yeah, right, bro. About 2 hours after he told me that story, he paged me up to the office because he had too many windows open on the computer and didn't know how to close them. Hacked into the Pentagon, eh? My butt. In conclusion, retail has some dumb mother effers. What's that one trick that they really don't want you to know? Mr. Clean magic erasers are just melamine sponges. You can buy them like 10 for $1 on eBay. If you want to cancel your hotel room last minute but there's a cancellation fee, call and change your reservation to a few weeks later. Then call later and cancel it. I call it around midday to change. Give a legitimate sounding reason like the meeting's rescheduled or I misremembered the flight date. This will hopefully ensure the agent doesn't make a note in the internal notes only field. Then you call back to cancel at least 8 hours later. It's unlikely the hotel has agents on 8+ hour shifts. Most of the dulling that occurs with cartridge razor blades is not a result of shaving, but rather water being left to evaporate on the blades. I've been using the same cartridge for the past 8 months by running the blades upwards, like in the opposite direction you would when shaving, on a towel 15 times after rinsing it off, and then blowing on it for a few seconds. 8 months later, this blade still barely pulls at all. I have a small mason jar filled with rubbing alcohol that I swish the blade in after I shave. That drives the water off the blades, and when I put the shaver down, the alcohol then evaporates. Didn't reach your 8-month record, but I had a blade cartridge last 5 months. You can file a complaint with the FCC if a telecom company jerks you around, and then you'll get the results you should have to begin with. You can just go to the Consumer Complaints page on the FCC website. I used this when AT&T charged me local taxes and fees for a state I hadn't set foot in for 14 months. I painstakingly crafted a Google Doc of every single penny and called them and asked for a refund. They told me that they can't refund taxes and that there was no one I could escalate to and offered me a one-time refund of $25. I filed a complaint with the FCC and a few days later I got a voicemail from Executive Customer Support asking for a call back. I didn't even bother and got another phone call where they told me they were calling about my letter to the FCC and refunded me every gosh darn penny and fixed my account. So AT&T are lying fricking scum, but they're still at the FCC's beck and call. When buying a car, negotiate the price of the car, not the monthly payment. People are usually more concerned with what the monthly payment will be and are often ripped off. It's easy to do the math with an interest calculator if you have a roundabout idea of what your rate will be. Signs that say "not responsible for damage" are usually put up by the very people who are responsible for that damage. For them, a $40 sign nips a lot of lawsuits in the bud. Anytime you order from Papa John's, use the promo code AARP25 and get 25% knocked off the subtotal. Works every time, everywhere. This is probably an ideal point for the narrator to chime in and let you all know that some of these tips may be a little dated, like this one, and I can't fact-check every single one, so mileage may vary. I'll try to take out the ones that are blatantly out of date and unworkable from now on. You're probably using too much laundry detergent, shampoo, and toothpaste each time you use those things. Browse incognito to get past a paywall news website. It only works when you're allowed X number of articles per week. Incognito is the new stealing your neighbor's paper off his driveway and then throwing it in the trash. Rite Aid Allergy Relief and Z-Quil by the manufacturers of NyQuil are in fact the same medication, diphenhydramine HCI 25 mg. But the allergy relief costs half as much and has twice as many doses as the Z-Quil. Bulk vinegar can replace a lot of cleaning products if you water it down. Pure white vinegar is corrosive. I eyeball a ratio, but there's actual recipes out there if you look for them. If you're going to make a purchase with an online retailer, it's often worth putting the items in your cart, then leaving the site for a little while because some sites will contact you with a special offer or discount code in an attempt to persuade you back into making what purchase you were going to make. It can save you a few bucks. It doesn't always work, but it's often worth attempting, especially with solely online retailers. If you bought something at a store and it goes on sale afterwards, but the store says they don't do price adjustments, buy another one and then return it using the original receipt. Within reason. I once had a customer buy a patio set for $300 at the beginning of the season. 4 months later, she saw that we put the last set on sale for $75 and insisted that we refund the difference to her. My manager very politely told her no. She then wanted to return the set and get a full refund, probably hoping that she could buy it back at $75. It wasn't within the refund period, which tends to only be 30 or even 15 days on a lot of non-perishable items. Economy size is not always the best cost per weight or volume or use. You'll often find some stores that print the cost per weight or volume in different units for different sizes. Same size packages by weight or count might have a different number of servings, so check that as well. I once lost the ticket I'd received when parking my car at the airport. Upon leaving, I was told that without the ticket, they'd have to charge me for a full day, which was fine since I'd been parked there for a week. This was in Denver, and it was several years ago. I discovered this by accident, and I haven't attempted to do it on purpose since, and I have no idea if it would still work. It won't work everywhere. Most larger airports use cameras and number recognition software. My ad manager tried to pull the same thing, and they showed him a time-stamped pic of the car entering the garage. There are some items that are never really on sale. When I worked at a grocery store, the name brand sodas had a very high regular price, then there'd always be a sale on them. The sale might change at times, but the sale price would always be there. The sale price is what the company really meant to charge you anyway. After all, who wants a case of soda for $9 when they can buy it for $6 and save $3? I've heard that some department stores do this with clothes or other items. A $90 dress that is on sale for $55 was never going to cost $90. Here in the UK, this is regulated and businesses are only allowed to advertise a product as being on sale or marked down for a period less than it was sold at the full price. For example, if they sold a box of cereal at £2 for full price for 30 days, they could advertise it on sale at £1 but only for 29 days, at which point it wouldn't be allowed to be called on sale anymore. Most Chipotle staff don't care about you trying to rip them off. Yes, we all know that the bowl gives you more and you can get extra of whatever you want. If you're slightly more committed, you can get a free water and fill it with soda, even though they now have a sign on the machine explicitly warning against it. Chipotle does not give a single crap. They know you're doing it and it's been accounted for in the book somewhere. What they do know is that they let you think you're being sneaky, and you, particularly broke college kids, think that you're gaming the system and coming out ahead. Then you'll keep coming back again and again. Even with responsibly sourced ingredients, the biggest cost is labor, especially when greater than 50% of the meal is rice, beans, and tortilla. You could get a burrito the size of a baby and it wouldn't make a dent in the budget compared to what it costs to have 10 people cook and serve that stuff to you. At least in California, if you have a self-storage unit that you didn't pay and was sold at an auction, like on Storage Wars and similar shows, you can go to the storage facility after the auction, and if they sold the unit for more than you owed, you're legally entitled to that extra amount. Off-name and store brands are not always cheaper. They at least partially rely on the misconception that brand name goods are always more expensive to sell things at a higher price. Always check the actual price tag, even if the store brand is, quote, on sale. You're legally allowed to get a full refund for an airline ticket within 24 hours of purchase, in the US at least. I've done this before multiple times. In fact, I count on it when booking tickets online in case I change my mind in 24 hours but need to get this amazing deal now. I just figured this out the other day. I bought a ticket and the price went down the next day, so I got a full refund and bought the same ticket for $200 less. Pressing 0 loads of times during an automated phone robot will put you through to a human at customer services. It works for pretty much any company. It's been my experience that any automatic phone system with voice recognition software will immediately forward you to a human agent if you just start swearing into the phone. I've got to remember this one. Say your name and then press the pound key. Mother effer, transferring you to a representative. The narrator would recommend that although you can swear all you like at the telephone robots, remember that being nice and patient with the operatives who follow is more likely to get you what you want, so be prepared to swing the mood. Instead of ordering Junior Cheeseburger Deluxe, order a Junior Cheeseburger and ask for all the toppings. Toppings are free at Wendy's, so save several cents. You don't have to do anything. Doing nothing is always an option. I learned that from my dad. Whenever I'd say, "Dad, you have to walk me to the movies," or something, he'd look and say, "Only thing I have to do is stay in the black and die." I didn't understand that at the time. I mean, he was a pasty white computer engineer. It makes perfect sense now, though. Lower your monthly mortgage payments by discontinuing your PMI, or private mortgage insurance. If you bought a house with a down payment of less than 20%, your lender required you to buy PMI. Likewise, if you refinanced with less than 20% equity, you're also paying for PMI. Once you get below 80% of equity owed, you can cancel your PMI or refinance without PMI. If you have ants that just won't go away, coming from a crack in the walls or persistently through your doors and windows, just mix it with a small blob of jelly with some borax, and then the worker ants will grab it and bring it back to feed their queen. It kills the whole colony in a day or two, and they don't investigate the rest of your house, since they're working overtime on the jelly. Buying a car. Always do negotiating via email or phone and bounce offers back and forth against competing dealers. It will always get you the best possible deal. Insurance agent here. Requote your insurance at least every 2 years, and if you get hurt in a car wreck, talk to your lawyer, not your insurance agent. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Real estate agents who deal with rental properties get away with blue murder because they work on the assumption that you don't know what your rights are or that you'll give them up too easily. Whatever country and state you live in, if you're renting your current residence, learn your rights and stick to them like glue. This is so important. I had a real estate owner try to remove us from our home, his property, because he was selling the building and the buyers wanted the space we were in immediately. He showed up while I was home alone with something to sign, stating I'd be out at the end of the month, when we're legally required to be given 3 months' notice. Despite his persistence to sign, I insisted that I couldn't sign any major decisions or documentation like that without my roommates. I told him to come back in a few hours when they're home. They were only out for a few minutes, but I needed time. I looked up the law, printed off the Tenants Act, and ensured myself of what I could and couldn't do in this scenario. When he came back, I provided him a copy of the Tenants Act and told him that as a result of him being a reasonable landlord and us being decent human beings, we'll make every effort to find a home and be out by the end of the month. But if we can't find a home, we'll not be going homeless simply because he believes he can ignore the law. What followed was about an hour of him standing at our door, yelling at us, grasping for excuses to evict us, including accusing us of illegally subletting to a girlfriend who had been living with us since day one, while he claimed to have never met her before and subletting not being illegal. He was generally clamoring to find every excuse to have us removed from the building. We were young adults, roughly at the age of 20, and as a result he believed through our own ignorance and his intimidation tactics, he could do whatever he wanted. Eventually, I was sick of this and gave up the fight, got smug and told him one thing. Go home, read the law, and if you want to try and evict us, come back with a formal notice. If you do, you'll be dealing with us the correct way, in court and by the law. Until then, I have nothing to say to you." He left and never came back. I didn't see him again until we collected our damage deposit and gave him the key. Hilariously, we found a better and cheaper place about a week later before the end of the month, and he was more than willing to give us a stellar recommendation to get us out of his property ASAP. Especially as a young adult, people will consistently try and take advantage of your ignorance as you begin to learn about the law and the way the world works. Don't let them. The HR department at work is there to protect the company, not you. Be very wary of the information you disclose to them. It's not a trick exactly, but something that a fair amount of people don't know is that you don't legally have to stop for the receipt checkers at stores, unless you're at a club store, like Sam's Club, that might require you to stop or they revoke your membership. Chiropractors are not medical doctors. Some of them are great and are basically physical therapists. A large majority of them think that germ theory is a lie and that spinal adjustments can cure anything. People have even died after visits because the adjustment caused a tear in the wall of their arteries, leading to a stroke. You can contact the credit agencies yourself and lock your files so that any attempts to get new credit on your social security number requires you to unlock them. Ice in your drink at any place that doesn't offer refills is a total rip-off. Ask for half the normal amount or none at all. I tend to always get water and they still fill the glass with ice first. Yep. As much as I love a cold drink, I want more than 100 milliliters of drink in my 300 milliliter cup. And yes, that is not an American-sized restaurant drink, because honestly, you guys are all nuts over there. The juror's right to nullify. It's our right to refuse unjust laws. There was a lot of press around Denver recently for people informing others that jury nullification existed. Arrests were made and charges were later dropped, but it's definitely something the legal system doesn't want to be common knowledge. I believe this was employed quite a bit during Prohibition in the US, and people were found not guilty of the crime of bootlegging by a jury of their peers. It was also employed by awful bigots during the Jim Crow era to let other white racists off the hook for hate crimes, but can we please blame the jury selection process in those cases instead of jury nullification? You don't actually have to pay the asking price for entry into the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. They make it seem like it's the price of admission, but it's really just a suggested donation. They make more money than they need to from wealthy donors. When you go to pay admission, just give them $1. Many stores have rules that prohibit employees from confronting someone they think to be a shoplifter. I've never shoplifted, but I had friends who took advantage of this. Don't do this, by the way. My friends eventually did get arrested. My store does this. As a cashier, I'm not allowed to confront a shoplifter even if I have proof. I'm only allowed to call a manager and hope that asset security is on point. What I can do is point out the item innocuously if it's in sight. 10 times out of 10, the customer will either give it to me to scan and say it slipped their mind, or say they decided they don't want it. You can almost always get a better price for a hotel by going directly to that hotel's website. Expedia, Hotwire, and stuff are kind of pointless. Also, you can't get a refund from those sites and you will get the worst room available. I use them to search hotels in the area and then compare. Then I pull up the best hotel's website. If the second baseman comes back from a meeting with the pitcher smiling, don't take your foot off the base. Grocery stores. Everything in a grocery store is pre-designed to take as much money from you as possible. The bread and milk will be in locations where you have to walk through or around the entire store to get both. The more expensive brands are at eye level, and they pay for this privilege. Cereal box characters look down right at children, which connects at a psychological level to make them want more cereal. Checkout lines have candy bars at child reaching level intentionally. New floor designs are even consulting casinos to no longer have rows and be more maze-like to keep you in the store for longer. Flyers mailed to you with your name and address are tailored based on your points card buying patterns. Good smells are intentionally pumped in to make you hungry. The list goes on. Joke's on them when it comes to checkout candy. My 2-year-old son has stolen so many candy bars, even in the cart he can reach them. Then he tucks it into his pocket. Took me a while to figure out where the candy comes from, and now I watch him more when I'm checking out. But he still grabs a bag of M&Ms every once in a while. Jury nullification. They literally don't want you to know this. They have to try to screen for it. Your children's teachers don't want to tell you that they can only fail a certain percentage of their roster. So, your little snowflake who is as dumb as a post and disruptive and always getting into trouble is being kicked down the road to the next teacher to deal with every year until they get the final kick across the stage to graduate, so the school can have high graduation numbers. This makes the administrators look like they're competent, most of them aren't, and the teachers look like they're amazing, some of them still are. And the school will look like it's great so everyone can keep their job, get more cash next year, and do the same to the next class. My source? Well, I'm part of the system and part of the problem. Several careers are totally or nearly completely unregulated in their qualifications. You can just call yourself a psychic, a faith healer, a nutritionist, pastor, minister, medium, DJ, or personal trainer, and that's it. For some, you'll be found out almost immediately by another professional, but since there's no licensing or required professional certification, there isn't really anything they can do about it. For some, you can be proven a fraud repeatedly and never face any consequences, and might even solidify your clientele's loyalty with attempts by the man or Big Pharma or Obama or liberals, conservatives, reverse vampires or whatever to stop you. Speed limits. Many of them are arbitrarily set without an engineered speed study and are unenforceable as a result. This is very state-specific. If you get a ticket, print out your state's laws on setting speed limits. Many of them have a maximum speed for different types of roads, and then require an engineered speed study for lower posted limits. If the posted limit was set without an engineered speed study, it may be unenforceable and you can argue this in court. Essentially, the agency posting the sign might have broken the law, and you only broke their law because they broke a higher one first. Then you go to your local road agency governing that stretch of road, like the city, county, or state transportation department, and file a public records request for the engineered speed study on that road. They'll have to respond in writing if they don't have one. Chances are they won't have one. Take the law and their admission that they don't have one with you to court, and show the judge that the speed limit is unenforceable and that you were driving a reasonable and prudent speed regardless of what was arbitrarily posted. My source? I'm the engineer for the road department that would do said speed studies, and we don't do them because then we'd have to raise the speed limits and the politicians don't want us to. This might just be a US thing, and depending on the cost of the ticket, I'm not sure most of us wouldn't just rather pay it than go to all the trouble, to be honest. Sound off in the comments if you know about other countries' rulings on this. Now, this is about how it is in Germany, where I'm from, but I could guess it's similar in other countries. Maybe some respective people can chime in. Shortly after high school, I had a short stint at a call center for a major German institute for political surveys and marketing research. Basically, we did cold calling and convinced people to answer some boring 20-minute questionnaires. At least we weren't selling crap. That would still ache my conscience until now. And about a third were political surveys, which people actually seemed to enjoy. Now, we had a one-day training course in which we were taught that, of course, we'd occasionally get people who were really mad. Like, "Oh, you frickin' call centers, I hate all of you. If you ever call me again, I'll come to your house and do bad stuff to you." In which case, we were instructed to calmly tell them, "Yes, sir, we'll put you on our own don't call list, but there are some other institutes that do this stuff and we have no control over what they do," which most people somewhat grumbly accepted. Now, here's the kicker. There's actually a blacklist that's shared between all marketing institutes in Germany that makes sure that nobody ever calls you again. And how do you get on that magical list? You simply tell the guy, "If you ever call me again, I'll sue you." We had a special menu point in our software that roughly translates to total rejector, that we were instructed to only and only press when the call person threatens with legal action. If the employee presses that button, it would call a supervisor who'd then take over the phone with the customer and put them on that blacklist. It was hammered in that no matter how mad the other party got, what they would plead and curse with you or threaten you, that was not point 3 of total rejection, but menu point 2, normal rejection, which I guess would only put you on your employer's blacklist. Which I guess only blacklists you from the one specific company calling. Point 1 was just, no thanks, bye. Have you ever experienced a completely wild plot twist in real life? My little brother hitchhikes a lot. He was trying to hitch to Valdez, Alaska, to run a half marathon there before hitching to my parents' house near Fairbanks. He got picked up near Seattle by this woman. They're chatting and my brother is telling her the story of how he rode his bike from Alaska to Argentina. The woman says her neighbor's son had done the same thing. Turns out she was my parents' next-door neighbor. I played EverQuest about 10 years ago and joined a guild. There was this dreamy high-elf cleric who was always playing at the same time as me. Who am I kidding? Everyone played all day on EverQuest. Anyways, we always played together, sometimes out killing things and sometimes just sitting around in the city talking. Over the course of 6 months, this woman became my reason for logging on. We eventually got married, in-game, which her real-life husband, who also played the game, didn't think was that funny. We were very close, and she told me many details about her personal life and her husband. It felt like I was on the shotgun end of an affair, but I didn't know any better. It felt great talking to her, my head was in the clouds. Anytime she signed on, my mood improved, and I looked forward to it every day. Eventually, she sent me pictures of herself. She was a pretty, blonde-haired woman of 27 years old, a 1 on the binary scale, which is the only honest rating system, and she asked me for pictures in return, but I said no, because it would be weird for a 12-year-old boy to send pictures of himself over the internet. I don't think she saw that coming, and I don't think I ever saw her again. So when my grandmother died, we all found out that when she was 13 in Argentina, her older brother, which none of us knew existed, became psychotic and was hospitalized in a mental institution. Remember, this is 1930s Argentina. Over time, my grandma lost touch with her brother, what with moving overseas and so on. It was always her secret shame that she abandoned her brother. Her brother apparently later died while still hospitalized, alone. Fast forward 70 years. Grandma dies and my father goes to Argentina, we live in Israel by now, to meet with family and find and pay respects at said uncle's grave. He starts going from cemetery to cemetery searching for this uncle, and he can't find him. Maybe he was cremated. So he starts going from mental hospital to mental hospital. Of course, we don't know where he was hospitalized, just searching through records. Sure enough, he picks up a 70-year-old trail and follows his uncle from hospital to hospital, some of which closed down decades ago. Finally, he reached modern times, and, plot twist, he finds his uncle alive and well, 96 years old, in a Buenos Aires mental hospital. Anyway, long story short, my dad took him out of said place, put him in a supported living environment, and got him off 90% of the meds they had him on. Thus emerged a relatively stable but still schizophrenic old man. The epilogue? Recently, he called my aunt and said, "Susan, did you know America has a black president now?" Oh boy. Well, that's funny. He's 96. He's mostly just going to vent his soft racism on his eye-rolling relatives. Also, there are 2 stories about Argentina in our first 3 stories, which isn't super weird, but it is improbable. I did find this one occurrence that happened to a friend of mine rather amusing. My friend who lives on campus near me had 5 other roommates, each with their own rooms of course. One of the roommates was a Chinese guy who for a while had been acting strangely. He alternated between being real friendly and towards being cold and unsure. He'd never open his door completely when people knocked and would sometimes forget things that he'd said when referenced later. His English skills would also fluctuate wildly, and he'd sometimes change his clothes oddly halfway through the day. He'd also usually spend all his time inside his room. He'd make himself a rather large amount of meals throughout the day. So those 6 months of this behavior, which was strange but largely not worth asking about. One day, my friend came back from class, opened the door which was next to the kitchen, looked to the side into the kitchen, and there were 2 of the odd-acting roommates staring back like deer in the headlights style. Turns out this guy had been hiding his twin brother in his room since he had arrived and thought that the roommates would report him to the university if they found out. So they took turns leaving the room or watching if the coast was clear before they both came out. They alternated cooking meals one at a time and stuff like that. I was working as an RA at the time, so I assumed they'd thought that if my friend found out, she'd tell me and I'd rat them out to the university. But in Australia, the RA role is a bit more relaxed, and I wasn't about to rat them out. I just found it funny. I've only ever reported really creepy or violent people to university, and there are a fair few creeps living on campus, by the way. The best story I've heard was the guy who spiked his own drink by accident. Someone I knew at university was talking to his new girlfriend about the Glastonbury Festival, which is this huge music festival here in the UK, with around 150,000 attendees. He went every year, and it transpired that she did too and had been going for years. After a while, they started comparing photos that they'd taken over the years. My friend pulls out a picture from his first visit to the festival. He's sitting on a fence with his back to a field. There are only 2 other people in the picture. A girl sitting about 20 feet away with her back to him, and her friend who's taking her picture. His girlfriend realizes that she was also there for the first time that year, and also pulls out a picture. In it, she's sitting in a field, and the only other people are in the picture out of 150,000 people at the festival are a guy sitting on a fence with his back to her and his friend who's taking his picture. So sometime last year I got a friend request from this girl I don't know. We have some friends in common, and her profile says she's gone to the same university and was in the same program, just a few years before me. So I figure we must have met at some party or something, and I accept the request. Flash forward to July. We moved to a new city for a new job, and on my first day, bam! There's the girl who added me on Facebook. We ended up dating for a few months too. Turns out she'd added me because one of our bosses has literally the exact same name as me, and she thought she was adding him to Facebook. Always thought it was a really bizarre situation. I met my aunt on a dating website. I started working at Home Depot around 2005 and was somewhat of an introvert. I graduated in 2004 and was really struggling to break out of the high school mentality and not having a set group of friends to hang out with. So I start at Home Depot, and this one guy, Nick, that I work with invites me out drinking. I'm only 19 at the time, but he's a few years older. We ended up becoming very good friends, but haven't necessarily breached the emotional stuff beyond chicks. Fast forward a few months, and my stepmom's mother dies. Pretty bleak stuff, and I really just have my family to talk to, which of course isn't the same at all. I'm kind of struggling, my buddy Nick is drifting away as well, and the day of the funeral comes. It's towards the end, and I walk up to say my final goodbyes and to look over. Nick is there staring at me dumbfounded. We high-five, hug, and find out he's my stepmom's nephew, and we're both drifting away because we didn't have anyone to bring real crap to outside of our family. We've been best friends ever since. In short, met a friend, high-fived over my grandmother's corpse, and leveled up to cousins. So my friend told me about this one. Her best friend was dating this guy, and they were pretty sure they'd found the one with each other. This guy was all ready to propose and was picking out rings. So these two decide to invite a third party into their boudoir, and as a third, he chooses his ex-girlfriend. At this point, any guy with a shred of common sense should know this is probably going to end badly, but this is where the twist is. The girlfriend enjoyed it a little too much and broke up with him to date his ex. Well, I wouldn't have said that was inevitable, but it was a possibility. If your partner is apparently at least bi enough that they're keen for the prospect of another lady and not just doing it to make you happy, they might end up having chemistry. If it was another guy, they might have fallen for them too. My new female bisexual friend Kay is dating a woman named Jen. Jen is super weird. Clingy, demanding, always accusing Kay of being shady, even accused Kay of being in a relationship with me. I'm also female. One day I ask Kay, "So, tell me how you met Jen." Kay and Jen met on a study trip abroad. Jen was romantically interested in Kay, but Kay wasn't really reciprocating. Jen was totally cool with it and they became good friends. In fact, during the trip, Jen introduced Kay via email to her cousin, Andre. Andre and Kay totally hit it off and start an online relationship, complete with exchanging pics and stuff. Andre sends Kay gifts when she returns home, including expensive jewelry. Andre also hooks Jen up with his friend Brian. Everyone is happy. Until one day, Jen finds out from a mutual friend that Andre and Brian are dead. They ran off together in a gay love affair and ended up taking too much of some illegal substance, just weeks before Andre was supposed to come meet Kay in person for the first time. In their shared grief, Kay and Jen started a relationship together. Wow, quite the frickin' story. In fact, I decide it sounds frickin' insane and I start doing some digging. I find the picture of Andre that he sent her in a random Google search. I look for any stories of this torrid love affair gone awry in a hotel binge, and there's nothing. All sorts of weird crap. So I say to Kay, "Have you ever thought that maybe Andre doesn't exist?" She is remarkably interested but not upset. We go to Andre's old email account, we get in using Jen's password, yes, they share passwords because Jen didn't trust Kay, and Kay loses her crap. Jen had created Andre and the whole story complete with fake pictures, paying a male cousin of hers to have phone conversations with Kay, getting racy pictures and all that stuff. During the Andre relationship, Kay's mother died unexpectedly, and Andre paid for all of Kay's expenses to make it home for the services. And it was Jen the whole time. This was a long con too, over a year of this crap. So Kay emailed Jen from the grave of dead Andre's account and forced her to confess, after which Jen threatened to self-delete. So Kay called the police who took Jen to the hospital, and then Kay got a restraining order and they never saw each other again. As a bonus detail, Jen had even had someone call Kay pretending to be Andre's aunt to tell her how sorry she was that he had died and that he loved her. That might have been Jen herself on the call. Also, supposedly during this binge, Andre and Brian cut each other's nether regions with plastic forks. It was one hell of a story. Kay is married to a real person who I've met now and has a daughter. This incident was several years ago. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was pretty stoked to open an email from a secret admirer in my senior year of high school. Every day for almost 2 weeks, I'd receive a new note listing what she thought were my better qualities, how she was too shy to admit her feelings to me in person, and she'd finally reveal herself at the big dance coming up that Friday. The emails became more and more forthcoming as the end of the week approached and finally culminated with a clue about how to figure out who she was. These are the only species besides humans that do the deed for pleasure. And I totally thought I was getting some action with a clue like that. I was a heavy-set lineman in the football team and kind of a class clown, which meant despite my lack of confidence, I was always in with the popular crowd. So, as we pre-drank for the dance, I told a few friends to be on the lookout for something dolphin-related. Word spread quickly, and by the time we arrived, I had a huge group trying to help me solve the mystery. A teammate of mine found out as the night went on that Adrienne, this cute girl I sat next to in social class, had a temporary dolphin tattoo on her left shoulder. After some prodding by my friends, I went over to her and the group of girls she was with. A slow song started as I sheepishly asked for a dance. With the entire school watching my 2-week-long mystery reach its climax, she leaned in close and whispered in my ear, "You're a complete jerk sometimes," promptly followed with a slap across the face. I'd never felt that level of confusion or embarrassment. She had orchestrated the whole thing because she didn't like my class clown demeanor in social class. I still hate dolphins. Has nobody considered that she actually did like him, but was severely embarrassed when he told everyone about her notes, and was now under a huge amount of pressure because the entire school knew about it? Hence why she called him a jerk and slapped him, and then made a crappy cover story about how she didn't like him being a class clown. I'm sure there are tons of girls that would rather come across as temporarily psychotic than have their intimate secret crushes broadcast to the entire school, especially for a guy that wasn't the star quarterback of the high school. I was job searching in my early 20s. I got this job interview and the guy didn't know I was coming. He grudgingly walks me into his office and starts asking me questions. I'd been to so many interviews, I just wasn't in the mood for someone to make me feel like I wasn't welcome. He asks me why I want to work here, and part of my answer is, I like to help people, and he responds with, bullcrap. I'm surprised, but I can tell that this is going nowhere. The rest of the interview is a formality, and I end with the sarcastic, sorry to bother you. I get back to my apartment and I'm feeling pretty down. I receive a voicemail asking me where I was for my interview. They say if I'm still interested to call back. I compare the number, name, and company with the business card I was given, and it turns out I was on the wrong floor. I just walked into a random office and was given an interview. But yeah, I didn't get either of those jobs. Well, it was very nice of them to go to the lengths they did even after you missed the interview first time. That makes your sarcasm to that first interviewer's passive aggression even more funny. I hope attention to detail wasn't on your CV. This one happened to a friend of mine. She had been feeling lonely for months and had found a guy she really got on with after meeting him gaming. Sadly, they lived too far apart to meet face to face. Cue months of them getting closer until he asks her out. They start e-dating. She confesses to me that she really likes him and she's saving money to go visit. Fast forward 14 months, she's saved the money, she's booked the flight, she's going to meet the man she loves and everything is perfect. She's flying out the very next day. Cue me getting a hysterical call late at night. It's hard to decipher what she's saying. I get her to slow down and take it easy. He's not him. I ask for clarification. He's not him, she cries. I'm still confused. I don't get it. What does that mean? He lied about what he does or his age or something? I asked, and she replies, No, he lied about who he is. What he is. He's not him, he is she. He's not Michael, she's Michelle. Turns out the girl was a lonely lesbian who looked a bit butch if appropriately dressed or made up for the webcam. She'd been using pictures of her brother the entire time for everything else. Sadly, my friend almost had a nervous breakdown and has ended up with serious trust issues and a medium-sized case of homophobia. In short, my friend dated Michael for almost 2 years before finding out just before she met the man of her dreams that it was Michelle, the guy's sister, instead. This one's pretty good as far as out-of-left-field twists go. There was a kids' baseball league in a town in Texas, and they'd have a few games a few times per week. The head and assistant coaches are dads of kids who play. During a game, a dad of one of the low-skill kids gets worked up because his son is only playing the league minimum innings. The coach refuses to play the sucky kid more because he doesn't want to risk annoying everyone else by throwing the game. The parent gets angrier and angrier until by the end of the game he's busting at the seams. After the game, the guy confronts the head coach in the parking lot and takes a swing at him. They start fighting and rolling around on the ground. The wife of the head coach shows up at this point and starts screeching at the parent to get off her husband. The twist? She doesn't know the context of the fight, and only going off the info she has, she screams, "Quit fighting my husband, you SOB! It's the other coach that's been screwing your wife!" The expression when that guy froze was priceless. So a friend once had a girlfriend and their relationship was pretty brutal. After a while, she moved back to her hometown, 2 hours north of Stockholm. As her friend, things seemed to be turning for the better as it seems they were going their separate ways. Then she dropped the pregnancy bomb on him. Out of guilt, duty or love, I don't know, he decides to try and make it work as he moves to her town and try to start a life there. The plot twist was that she wasn't pregnant. This wouldn't be so bad unless it were the fact that she had encouraged him to not use protection. This in turn resulted in her being knocked up for real. As if she hadn't screwed him over enough, she then revealed after a few months into the pregnancy that she was lesbian and had a girlfriend on the side. It really sounds like something out of one of those bad shows on the TV, and needless to say, my buddy was in shambles upon returning to Stockholm to start anew. In short, my buddy fell for the old fake prego, real prego, then dump scheme. I used to know a guy named Ben. Ben was the biggest two-faced D-bag I've ever known. He once met a girl online, went out to meet her, and returned a few days later. When asked about her, to his female friends, he'd said that there was no spark or chemistry or whatever, and to his guy friends, he'd say that she was so ugly he couldn't stand to look at her. Ben hated ugly women. Ben and I lived together briefly, and my overweight girlfriend, later wife and now ex, stayed with us frequently. She was friendly with him, would hang out with him while I was at work, and frequently drive him around if needed. As soon as she was gone, though, he'd laugh about how fat she was. Ben hated fat women. Years and years pass, I'm on OkCupid one day and I see a new member. She looks vaguely familiar. I look at her photos and it hits me. Ben, who was already unattractive, gained a bunch of weight and became transgender. In essence, he became a large, ugly woman, the very thing he claimed to hate the most. The end. Or is it? Transgendered Ben briefly dated a lesbian friend of mine who lives with my ex-wife and would come hang out not knowing that he was in the house of the woman he'd only a few years before make fun of for being fat. Their relationship with the lesbian didn't last, needless to say. My friend's mum was in hospice care dying of cancer when she told her son, my friend, that the man she was married to, the man that raised him his entire life, wasn't his biological father. This was news to everyone involved and was later confirmed through testing. Without going into too many details, the man who raised my friend was not the most attentive father, nor all that warm and kind. They had kind of a typical broken home story. He was a bit of a drunk, got divorced from the mum, and the kid was a big-time troublemaker. The final twist came shortly after their mum passed, though. The non-bio dad took the kid hunting and told him that he didn't care, that my friend was his son, that nothing and no one was going to take that away from him. Coming from that man, it was huge and nobody expected it. They became extremely close after that, and last I heard, they still visit each other several times a week. Well, I'm glad there wasn't a third plot twist there with that hunting trip turning into some sort of horror movie. It's weirdly sweet how much warmer they became once the truth was out there, although I can't help but wonder why the dad couldn't have been a better dad from the start. People are just weird though. My mother told me that my 2-year older brother Jeffrey died 2 weeks after birth. Anyway, so I met a guy in the lobby of the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. We were hitting it off really well. We both loved and wanted to become physicists, and we loved Doctor Who. The only problem was he was 22 and I was 20. We told each other our names, his being Jeffrey and mine Lucy, and gave each other our phone numbers. A couple of days later, we went to dinner as a date. He told me that he was adopted into a family at only a couple of weeks old. I told him about my older brother dying at around the same age. He asked for his name, which I politely gave him. He got a little worried and started to sweat. We went back to my house. We did not do the deed, ever, and we called my parents. They said, do a blood test. The very next day, we went to the doctor, and so it turns out I dated my brother. In short, I dated my supposedly dead older brother. Back in my high school days, my friend Joe would always be the one to throw the parties when his parents were out of town. After one such party, we had some beer and liquor left over and weren't sure what to do with it. Joe's sister was not 21 yet, but she was in college, so we asked her if she could keep it in her closet. That way, if Joe's parents found it, they wouldn't be that hard on her because everyone drinks in college. A couple of weeks later, Joe wakes up to a text message, "Mom found your booze, I told her it was yours." Frick, right? So Joe gets up and goes downstairs to see the few beer cans and bottle of vodka. His mum tells him to throw out all the beer. He finishes doing that and then gets to the bottle of pretty nice vodka. "I guess you want me to throw this out too?" To which his mum replies, "Well, I'm not going to make you buy another one." Awesome twist, huh? We were pumped. Fast forward another couple of weeks. Another friend of ours is throwing a party, and Joe volunteers to bring the windfall that is this bottle of vodka. We get to the party and pour some shots, and wouldn't you know it, the bottle was filled with water. Well played, Joe's mum. Well played. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.